All right, let's do it. Welcome to the Deeper Dive presented by Super Draft. Dave Lochran, Adam Scher, big 12 game slate, getting an early start today. Glad to have all of you guys with us as always. Adam, a lot of injuries, a lot of news, a lot of games to break down, man. I think we jump right into this one and get it started.
Yeah, pretty crazy slate. Lots of moving parts. Luckily, we've already gotten a decent amount of news that we were waiting on, but still a lot of stuff that we need to find out.
That is true. Before we do, Super Draft contest when I can't play there, man. I was pretty disappointed about that. I was actually trying to get into that contest, the 20K the other day, but
That's
what are
really
you gonna
weird for
do?
Pennsylvania too.
What's that?
That's really weird since like you guys have sports betting and everything, but you
I know. It's surprising, right? I don't know what it was. I couldn't play on Thrive either. Very unfortunate. But anyway, future of daily fantasy sports has arrived with Super Draft because they've got the elusive and exclusive game mode multiplier. Hopefully everyone went over and checked that out the other day, and hopefully one of our viewers took it down. 4K up top. The multiplier mode means no salary restrictions, complete lineup freedom, multiplying the fantasy points of certain players based on, well, their talent, really. So Harden would be a 1x. I think that one day, like Kevin Love was 1.4, even though he wasn't great, it was still a very enticing spot. John Morant was like 1.4. So some really good spots to get to, especially if you're using good projections and you know the game. You can use your fantasy sports knowledge to draft any player you want and build your very own dream team. You got countless lineup possibilities, so you can experience daily fantasy sports the way you want. Super Draft offers contests for football, basketball, baseball, hockey, and PGA, so you can always enjoy the best of DFS all year round. If you sign up today using the promo code AWESEMO, that's AWESEMO, you will get free $20 in super cash with your first deposit of $100 or more. Download it in the App Store or play at superdraft.io. No limits, more winning. That's Superdraft, sponsor of the Deeper Dive. Same question as always, man. What are we focusing on right now? What type of lineup builds are we looking at? It's a big, big slate.
Yeah, seeming like a pretty balanced slate for me, at least on DraftKings, where they've done a really good job of pricing up a lot of the cheaper values. So it's kind of tough to go 2 stars and scrubs, but you also have a lot of just mid range guys on the slate that stand out because guys around them are injured. So it's looking like a pretty balanced roster construction. Getting looking to get as many of these like high mid range guys in as I can.
Let's jump into it. Once again, happy to have all of you guys with us watching on this wonderful Wednesday. Toronto and Philadelphia. Um, this is one of the. Let me ask you this: how many games would you say of the 12 are spots that you're really just not interested in?
Not interested as in like have
As in,
less
like
than
maybe
like
you have one player or so, but not games that you really like.
yeah, I don't know, I guess like one.
Would this be one of them, or is this one where a lot of the salaries are too low for you to overlook?
Actually, I guess it would be two because this one,
It's not that great.
right? It's not that great. The salaries on Toronto on DraftKings are pretty appealing, but in the context of the entire slate, there's still not a whole lot that stands out.
And that's kind of where I'm at too. I felt like I spent a lot of time researching this game earlier today, thinking I should like it more than I do, because a lot of the salaries are pretty appealing. But Siakam hasn't played more than 30 minutes since he returned. He's been back for 5 games now. He hasn't played more than 30 minutes, and it's not like all of those games have been blowouts. So we can get into that. Serge Ibaka is pretty affordably priced, but at the same time, there's also going to be a lot of value at this position. Marcus Gasol's price has come down. His minutes have also been trending downward. I don't know what Nick Nurse is doing there, but since Siakam returned, it's definitely going to mix that front court up. And then you've got Kyle Lowry and Fred VanVleet. Both of them are cheap. But again, in context, against the Philadelphia team that has struggled on the road. They certainly struggle without Joel Embiid, but still a good defensive club. What are we doing with the Raptors?
Yeah, I think the two guys from Toronto that look the most appealing to me are Lowry and Siakam. Siakam at 6,900 on DraftKings, Lowry at 66. You mentioned the playing time for Siakam, and they had said going into his last game that he was on kind of like an undisclosed minutes limit. He played 29.1 minutes. That game was a blowout. It ended up being a 5-point game, but the second unit for Toronto played basically the entire fourth quarter. Siakam played the last like minute 38 or 2 minutes of the game, somewhere around there. So I have him at 32 minutes here. Obviously, he could get more, but that's where I'm comfortable putting him at. And it kind of just makes him like a secondary option. Lowry obviously plays big minutes in competitive games, and that's been the case all season long. But the thing that concerns me with him is that for the season, when he plays alongside Pascal Siakam, he only has a 20.3% usage rate. And obviously that's not very high. And there's a lot of guards on the slate that look really good. There's a lot of guards in this price range that are missing key contributors on their team, whereas Lowry is now playing on a fully healthy Toronto team against a tough Philly team. So neither guy stands out as overly appealing for me. OG Anunoby's 4,200 on DraftKings. That works as filler, but still not anything exciting. And then as far as Gasol and Ibaka, they've gone back to pretty much splitting 48 minutes at center. I know sometimes against Philadelphia, you get them playing more minutes alongside each other, but with Embiid out, you're not getting quite as big a Philadelphia lineup. So I'm not really anticipating that happening either. So not anything I'm prioritizing here. I would say that the guys I get to the most probably end up being Lowry, Siakam, and OG, but I don't think I'll get a ton of any of it.
So Ben Simmons has had a very tough go of things against Toronto for his career. He averages 5.6 turnovers per game through 10 career starts. He's got games with 10, 11, 9, 7 turnovers. It's been a very difficult spot, and it hasn't just been with Kawhi Leonard on the roster. They've done a very good job of slowing him down and stopping him from getting to the basket. I know with Embiid out, you might see a slightly more aggressive Ben Simmons, but I'm not confident here. This is a spot that concerns me. Wouldn't be surprised to see his shot volume down and his turnovers up, because this has been the case with a very good defensive team in Toronto, especially a good rim protecting team in the Raptors, whether it be Ibaka or Marc Gasol in the paint. So the Ben Simmons game last time was the best game I've ever seen him play. 34, 12, and 12, 5 steals, 2 blocks. Phenomenal game. But let's keep in mind, he also shot 14 times. He just made 12 of them. And he also knocked down 10 of 14 free throws, which is not par for the course.
Right.
And just quickly, and then I'll let you jump in. But when it comes to guys like Al, you know what? Go ahead. We'll close out Simmons, and then we'll get to the rest of this team. I don't want to say too much.
Yeah, I was gonna say with Simmons, I mean, obviously he has the kind of upside that he's shown recently. That's always been the case with him. But I'm also not willing to just say like this is a completely different player now because he's had, like 5 good games in a row. The guy still can't shoot away from the basket. A team like Toronto is capable of slowing that down. And since Embiid's injury, you're still only talking about a 21.6% usage rate. It's not like Ben Simmons is out there chucking 30 shots a game or something like that. And the obviously most important thing when you're talking about DFS is that his salary has gone up. He's up to 9,300 on DraftKings. There's a ton of guards that are underpriced. If you just look at the guys around Simmons, you have Zach LaVine, you have Russell Westbrook kind of sandwiching him. You have Trae Young just above him too, who's questionable. But all of those guys, I think, are in much better spots and much more appealing options if you're going to that price range. And that's, again, ignoring the fact that there's a very, very strong mid-range of guards.
Exactly. It's, to me, the price on Simmons is not one that I see myself particularly interested in, nor do I think I need to get there. I know he's, like you said, coming off some really solid games. Is this something that should be the standard going forward? Probably not. And look, to be fair, he's been good recently, but he hasn't been great outside of that one game. He's just been, pretty routine, like 40, 50 fantasy points, which can be okay on the 12-game slate. I don't think that's going to get it. Or I don't think it's going to get you where you need to go. And I certainly don't expect a huge game from Simmons. Even if he's more aggressive, it's a spot that has really plagued him in the past. I'm also not someone that looks at, like previous matchups and says, oh, well, he's always struggled here, so he's going to struggle again. But this is really like the nut low matchup for him in terms of not being able to get to the rim.
Right. And to your point about not looking at previous matchups and saying that they predict the future, it's the kind of matchup where he should struggle anyway, though. It's a team that protects the rim well. Saying. Right. And he doesn't do anything except score at the rim.
Right. When you say from a BVP standpoint, he's really struggled against this guy. It might just be the fact that he's terrible against breaking balls, and this guy throws a really good breaking ball. Like in terms of basketball terminology, not being able to get to the rim is something that's going to plague him. Also, just a ton of pressure on him as a ball handler. It's a tough spot, and I don't expect to see a huge game here. I actually grabbed the under on like every player prop for Simmons today, so I'm invested on that level for him not to have a good game. What about guys like Horford and Harris, who have been better with Embiid off the floor. Richardson's a 0.85 fantasy point per minute player with Embiid off. But outside of that, Horford and Harris have been pretty decent. Have they been decent enough, though, to pay for them today?
It's just really difficult for me to get to them on this slate. Obviously, you're expecting 32, 33 minutes from Horford, 34 to 36 from Harris. The usage goes up for both of them without Embiid, but you also get more productive minutes for Horford. Since Embiid's injury, Harris has averaged 1 fantasy point per minute. Horford's at 0.99 DraftKings points per minute. But the salaries are, I think, pretty much where they should be. And I expect them to produce at an average to slightly below average level in this matchup. Only a 105 team total for Philly on a slate with as many good options as there are. There's just nothing from Philly that really looks that good to me.
I'm with you. You want to move on to the next one here?
Yep.
All right. So Orlando and OKC has one of the lower totals on the slate, coming in at 209. It actually is the lowest on the slate by 6 points. The only one close would be the Sixers and Raptors, and we just ran through that one. I guess we can start it off with the Orlando Magic. Is there anything for the Magic side you like?
I think that Vooch is okay. Like, he's pretty cheap. He's a 1.3 fantasy point per minute guy. And there's a chance that you're not getting Steven Adams or Nerlens Noel here, which would be pretty appealing. But center is also an absolutely stacked position today. You have guys at the top that I like more than Vooch. You have guys below him that I like more than Vooch. So even though he's the number one guy for me from Orlando, he's still not a top guy for me in the context of the entire slate.
Yeah, I mean, I just really don't have anything from the Magic.
Yeah.
If you want to talk, let's talk about the Thunder, because the OKC Thunder could be without Steven Adams. They could also be without Nerlens Noel. Now, Adams played 2 minutes last game. And if you just look at, Mike Muscala, number one, guy was flat out terrible. But I believe I counted that he was in foul trouble on 4 different occasions. And he still played 25 and a half minutes. So if they are out, there were times where Gallo was at the 5 because there was nobody else to play the position. Darius Baisley was getting some minutes at the 5, but Mike Muscala left with 2 fouls, returned, caught a 3rd foul in the 2nd quarter, starts the 3rd quarter. Boom. There's his 4th, returns late in the 3rd and gets his 5th, and then basically played the whole 4th quarter. So if let's just assume for a minute that Adams and Nerlens Noel are out, it's only reasonable to assume that a lot of minutes are going to end up going to Mike Muscala. And I don't know if Justin Patton's going to be on the floor either.
Yeah, I think if they're both out, then obviously you have to consider Muscala at least as a value option. His salary's dropped all the way to $3,500 on DraftKings, which, given the fact that there's not that many really cheap options available on DraftKings today, makes him stand out a bit. You also can roster him at power forward, which is nice. If you had to roster him at center, it would be a totally different conversation. But for the season, he's a 0.74 fantasy point per minute guy, and he really should be playing around 30 minutes if they're both out. You can go back and look a couple of games ago. He got 27 minutes and then 31 minutes the game before that. So the minutes should be there. He's obviously not a great producer, and he's one of those guys where even if they are both out, you're still most likely looking at a projection around like 19, 20 fantasy points. So it's not someone that you should be like rearranging lineups to get in. But if you are looking for someone in that price range, he becomes a pretty strong option.
Do you think Patton plays?
I would think that they go with Gallo, but I would think Gallo picks up back up 5 minutes, and then you get more minutes for like Baisley, Diallo, Dort.
Yeah, I have no idea. I really don't, because in a spot like this, you get any minutes that you can. I know he was questionable with an illness, but I'm assuming that's not an issue anymore. But ultimately, like you said, Steven Adams or Mike Muscala, not a particularly good per minute guy, was terrible in that game against Houston. But let's say no. Let me ask you this, and then we can move on to the rest of this team, kind of tie this up. If Adams and Nerlens Noel are out, are you giving Muscala 30 minutes?
Yeah.
Me too. I have them at 32 if they're out, because I can't imagine you want to run Baisley and Gallo a ton at the 5 outside of some backup minutes.
Right, especially against an actually big Orlando center position.
Exactly. So I would think that he has to get those minutes. You would agree you can definitely do worse than getting a guy that's playing the 5 and 30 plus minutes.
Yeah, you can do worse and you can absolutely do better.
Exactly. On a 12-game slate, there's no question. Do you think he should be reserved for like straight stars and scrubs lineups?
I don't know if I would go that far. I mean, because there's going to be some situations where, like, if you drop, I don't know, some $5,500 guy to Muscala, you can get another really good player at like 8,000 or something. And I wouldn't, call that stars and scrubs. But the reason that I do think he'd be a little bit less useful today, even if those guys are out, is because you can make such good lineups without having to go up to like James Harden or LeBron or something like that. That even like in the 5K range, you have some decent options today. So it's not the type of slate where I think he's quite as useful as he would be if it were like a slate where Westbrook were out or something like that.
So what about if Adams is out and Nerlens Noel plays?
Then I'm really interested in Noel because his salary is down also. He's sitting at 4,400 on DraftKings. He played about 24 minutes in the last game that Adams missed. And he's a good fantasy producer. At 4,400, I think he'd be a good value.
He's $4,000 in power forward eligible on FanDuel.
Right, which is even more appealing than taking up your center spot. And
sure.
Sorry, he played 21 minutes. Muscala played 25 in that game.
Yeah. So I think Nerlens Noel would definitely become a quality value option in this spot. Credit to Orlando's defense. They've done a very good job defensively, but you would think that Nerlens Noel is the type of guy that could come in there, get you some boards, a couple steals and blocks, and doesn't need to give you 20 real points, which is the type of guy that I'm more than okay with.
For sure, more valuable on FanDuel than DraftKings, though.
You say he's more valuable on FanDuel?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's pretty unlikely that you're going to be getting any double-double or triple-double bonus from Nerlens Noel.
Yeah, and center is just a really stacked position today. Power forward, not quite as much.
For sure. Okay. Anything else for the Thunder?
No, I mean, obviously, everyone knows Chris Paul and Gilgeous-Alexander are capable of big games, but it's a slow Orlando team. It's a good defensive team. They don't really grade out as anything special for me. Same goes for Gallo.
All right, let's move it on then. So we've got Detroit and Sacramento. This game really didn't draw much attention earlier in the day, but then you get the news that Marvin Bagley is out. Is this guy ever going to play consecutive games? I mean, my God.
Yeah, I mean, he played 3 in a row where he played at least 30 minutes, and then that was hurt again.
I know. I'm being.
No, I mean, I was agreeing with you. I knew you weren't being serious.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I'm sure there's always going to be that. Well, he played 3 in a row, and last year he played 12 in a row. But no, it's crazy the amount of injuries that he's been dealing with, and this was something that apparently sprung up before last game, right? Because there was. Oh, he's questionable, but he wasn't. He just left the game early, and then he wasn't on the injury report, but there were concerns that he was. And now he is actually out. He played 30 minutes last game. Decent enough game. If you paid $5,400, you were satisfied with that for sure. But now Marvin Bagley is out. So that begs the question, Adam, where are we going with that? I'm starting with the road team here. We'll get to Detroit and Drummond in a moment. Where are we going with Dwayne Dedmon's minutes?
That's obviously a really big question. I'm interested to see what the starting lineup looks like because Luke Walton's been all over the place with this. And, we joked going back to this time with the Lakers that he generally doesn't know what his rotation is going to look like. But
remember what he said about Bagley earlier in the year?
About him needing to play only center.
And then
started him with the 4. Yeah.
Power forward next game. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can only be so confident in what's going to happen. When Bagley was out before, we were getting starts from Harry Giles. In one of those games, you got like 30 minutes from Dedmon off the bench, and then he kind of went back to not even being in the rotation. In the most recent game where Bagley played, Dedmon was the backup center behind him. So my best guess is that Dedmon gets the bulk of the minutes, whether it's Giles or Dedmon starting. They could still start Giles, play him like 16 minutes, give Dedmon like 20. But as of right now, I'm hoping we get more news on it, but I'm leaning towards Dedmon being the guy at 3,100 that I take a shot on. I have him at 20 minutes, which, I think there's certainly the potential for more, but also the potential for less thanks to Walton. But he's been, a 0.85 fantasy point per minute guy. He's in a good matchup against Detroit. So I think that he's someone I'm willing to take a chance on.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, even when Giles was starting, you just weren't getting like legitimate minutes from him anyway. So I think what were we getting, 16 from him or so? And
Yeah,
then,
he was normally doing like one stint in the first quarter and one in the third.
right, which just isn't enough. And then
Right.
Dwayne Dedman. What do you think his minutes will? If you're projecting him right now, what are you giving him?
So the way I did it is I went 20 on Dedman, 16 on Giles, and then the rest of the center minutes going to be Elitza.
Okay.
That's more or less, it's an educated guess. Like I wouldn't argue if someone told me that they thought Dedman plays 24 or they thought Dedman plays 14. I wouldn't argue like passionately against them.
So I have him at 22 as well, or I'm sorry, 20 as well. And just one of the big reasons for that is I don't know what it's not Giles minutes I'm concerned about. It's, could Walton say, screw it, I'm just going to give Bjelica monster minutes at the 5, which we've seen before.
The one thing that makes me think that is unlikely is if Drummond plays.
Yeah, I don't know though. That's kind
they
of
also may not care.
That's kind of the thing. Like some of these coaches, and I've seen Walton do this in the past. I think like logically, your point is 100% right. But it's also just, I'm never surprised to see coaches just totally eschew matchups
Right.
at this point.
Yeah, and I mean, even just going back to Dedman's minutes, he played 32 minutes off the bench in the game against Phoenix. The next game he played 11. He was in foul trouble, and then after that he played 4 minutes. So I mean, that's the kind. And the game before he played 32, he played 2. So that's the kind of volatility you've been getting in Dedman's minutes, and it's why even with Bagley out, I just don't. I can't be very confident in it, but obviously with him being min salary, I think that the most likely outcome is that he ends up being a good play.
And I think you're right. Again, like the only other thing I'd say against it, Bjelica is 6'10", by the way. He's not like a small guy, but it feels like Walton's disdain or seeming disdain for Dedman and Harry Giles, like actually giving them significant minutes, is why I don't think it's crazy to assume that he could just say, screw it. Bjelica is the guy. But like you said, it's all really just educated guesses at this point. And I don't even know how educated you can be with these guesses.
Yeah. And I mean, I think, it goes to your point, kind of the theme of the season or the trend of the season has been, if there is any way Luke Walton can find to screw Dwayne Dedman, he does it.
Exactly. Do you like anything else from Sacramento before we talk about the Pistons?
Yeah, I like De'Aaron Fox a lot. It's obviously a good matchup against Detroit. It's a bad defensive team in Detroit, but Fox gets a usage bump without Bagley on the floor. This season, he's averaged, with and without Bagley, he's averaged 1.16 DraftKings points per minute either way. Smaller sample with Bagley on than without him. But without him on the floor, 29.4% usage rate compared to 25.5% with him on the floor. The assist percentage without him is 33.6% compared to 42.7% with him. But again, I think that the assists would come down at least somewhat over a larger sample there. So the part that is really interesting to me is that the usage does go up and you're probably getting, 35, 36 minutes in a competitive game, and he should lead this offense. So I think De'Aaron Fox looks like a really good option.
Yeah, I like him a lot too. Detroit defensively has really struggled lately. They're not a pace-up team, but not terribly concerned about this. Not to mention that De'Aaron Fox, has been playing monster minutes, and that's something that always has to be considered. I think his price point's reasonable, a little bit closer to the high end of De'Aaron Fox, Jesus, price points, but I think he's perfectly fine. I don't know if I mentioned it, but this game has a 221.5 total. Pistons are 1.5 point favorites. DeAndre Drummond right now is questionable to play with did you see this injury, by the way?
No.
Okay, so before it was the eye, right?
Right, the
avocado.
Right.
Now he's got a lip injury. All the insinuations you can make by putting those two together. To be fair, it's a laceration on his lip, but I don't know, man. He got popped in the face in the second half of Monday's game. I would think he's going to play.
Yeah, I mean, I have him in. It's a 7:00 game, so I'm not too concerned about it. And obviously, if he sits, it's just plug in Christian Wood.
Yep. So whether or not to play Christian Wood doesn't matter, or isn't a dispute or a debate. We know what's going on. It is strange, though, something you and I had discussed the other day off the show, that with Christian Wood, he usually could come out there and play a pretty solid stint. And Dwayne Casey would be like, all right, get back to the bench. You're getting your 12 minutes or your backup center minutes. We've seen in spots recently where if he gets off to a good start, Andre Drummond actually ends up not playing nearly as much as he did. This has happened twice in the last 4 games. Really interesting stuff, because Drummond could come out and play 38 minutes or 27. I'm still projecting him for 34 minutes, but there was a time where I was giving Drummond 36 or 37 minutes like every single night. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. And I have him at 35 here, but again, earlier in the season, I was giving him like 37, 38. So
exactly.
Yeah, it's been interesting because Christian Wood is on that guaranteed contract now that converted the other day. And it seems like recently when he does play well, they're at least taking the opportunity to not run Andre Drummond into the ground quite as much.
Do you like Drummond if he plays?
Yeah, I do, because of what we were just talking about with the Sacramento front court.
Oh, yeah. Especially if Bielisa gets some of those minutes.
Right. I mean, Dedmon is confident, obviously. But, Harry Giles and Bielitsa, whatever minutes those guys are getting, Drummond should be able to just go nuts. And it's not like he doesn't have a huge size advantage on Dedmon, too, in terms of weight. So it should be a spot where he gets plenty of rebounds. I think that it's a pretty decent matchup for them as well, because Sacramento has been playing faster since De'Aaron Fox came back, as we expected. So that's a benefit. And his salary has come down. So I think he looks pretty good. I think Derrick Rose looks like a pretty decent option coming off of a game where he played 34 minutes.
You hear the Sixers are interested in him?
Oh, really?
Yeah. Another guy that doesn't shoot threes.
Right.
I would take him. Or sorry, that doesn't make threes. I would take him all day, though. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So, I have him in for 31 minutes. I think that Reggie Jackson basically takes Tim Frazier's minutes. So I have a 31-17 split there. There's similarly, I prefer Jokic to Drummond at center. And there are plenty of guards that I have ahead of Rose, but I do think that they both look like good plays.
Okay. Yeah, so I've just been projecting Rose for 30 minutes because it could be 28, it could be 33. What are you giving Rose?
I have him at 31. I have Jackson at 17.
Okay. And we already know that Jackson will be limited. That's confirmed, but that should have been known anyway, right? He's been out for, what did he play, like 2 or 3 games all season?
Yeah, he's played 35 minutes this year, I think.
There you go. So 35 minutes on the season. So just to be clear, and you mentioned 31 minutes, I have him at 30. You're not at all worried about Derrick Rose getting minutes siphoned from Reggie Jackson at all, especially with Tim Frazier already ruled out.
Yeah, I'm concerned as in, like, I think it's less likely Rose plays like 34 minutes again, but it's not a huge concern.
It's also possible that you could see guard spot like Langston Galloway get his minutes knocked back down to 20.
Right.
It's very easy to shuffle those minutes around to keep getting your best score opportunities. Any other thoughts for the Pistons?
No, everything else is pretty useless to me. Like, you're just getting kind of minutes all kind of like mashed together for guys like Morris, Bruce Brown, Sekou, Svi. Yeah. So, if Drummond's out, then obviously Christian Wood, as we mentioned, potentially you could get more minutes from Markieff Morris as well in that situation. But the way it is right now, it's pretty much just Rose and Drummond.
Eli Manning just officially announced his retirement.
It's kind of sad because like that quarterback class was like one of the first that like I remember like as a kid.
That's totally when we started, probably when you start getting like real into sports, not just liking them, but like legitimately following them closely.
Right. Yeah. I think I was like 13 when he was drafted.
Were you 13? Yeah. I was a little bit older than you, but what year was he drafted?
I think he was 03, right? Oh yeah. 04. So
that was the Rivers class.
Yeah. It was Eli, Rivers,
Ben.
Yeah.
Was Rodgers?
Yeah. I know. I remember my freshman year. What'd you say?
Was Aaron Rodgers in that class? No,
no. Rodgers was the Alex Smith class. So Rodgers was the one after, I think.
He might have been a few years after that. Not that it matters, but yeah, that because Rodgers was expected to be drafted.
Rodgers was 05. Eli was 04.
Okay, so it was 1 year after.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, so 04. Wow. How old were you?
14.
14. Shit, I was 17. Yeah, it's a crazy time, man. So, well, he was at the end of his rope, to say the least. Now you got to hope that Daniel Jones can come in and get that work. But this is a basketball show, so we keep it moving. Just thought I'd let everybody know. New York Jesus Christ. New York Knicks. Called them the Yankee.
I didn't even catch it.
That's not even football.
I know. I thought you were like laughing at something in chat. I had to like kind of replay what you just said.
I'm just dumb. New York Knicks, LA Lakers. This game at Madison Square Garden. So you've got the New York Knicks here as monster dog, 11.5-point home dogs, 223 total. Let's get through this one, starting with New York. Is there anything you like from the Knicks against a very good, stout Lakers defense?
Not particularly.
There are injuries with Marcus Morris, but
what'd you say?
I said the Marcus Morris thing would be like the only. Was he being confirmed yet? He's probable, I think. So no, actually
questionable.
He's still questionable. Yeah, I typed it in and got Markeith. That's like the only real thing right here.
Yeah, and I mean, if he's out, you get to Kevin Knox. Congratulations.
That's what I'm saying. There's not really a lot to get excited about. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, there's not. I mean, Randall is a 1.25 fantasy point per minute guy, which is nice, but still not a priority for me. Morris is reasonably priced, but just not a very appealing matchup.
Okay. I gotta say, Randall has been a lot better, like significantly better since Mike Miller came to New York. But I just don't, it's also a spot. I mentioned that I thought Randall last time they faced him, last time in the Staples Center was, I think a couple weeks ago, right? Yeah, the 7th. Mentioned it. It was a tough spot for Randall, just being able to get into the paint, get to the basket. He's somebody that is physical and uses his body to be able to score. And this is a tough spot for him to do so. He shot 5 for 16 in that game. I'm not surprised that he struggled from an efficiency standpoint. So, Randall's the one guy on this team that you can generally look at and feel pretty good about. But even here at this price, if Randall was like 6,800, I think we'd be having a totally different discussion. But
yeah, agreed. Bruce Brown ruled out.
Okay, so Bruce Brown is out. Derrick Rose, I believe I just saw he remains in the starting lineup, right?
Correct.
All right. So, I mean, where are these minutes going? Reggie Jackson probably doesn't play more than 20.
Yeah, I would be kind of surprised if he even got there.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go like 32 on Svi, which doesn't really do anything for me at 5K. Galloway, I guess, can go from like 22 to 28. You could take like Snell from 26 to 32.
Nothing significant.
Yeah, nothing
from a fantasy standpoint.
Correct.
Let's talk about the Lakers. You got Anthony Davis, who played last game. He was out for like 13 days or something. And now he played, but he was limited. He played 23 minutes. They got blown off the court by the Boston Celtics, 32-point loss in that game. And he predictably was not himself. Neither was the entire team. Now they got a nice little bounce back spot here against the Knicks as they continue this road trip. Good chance this game isn't competitive, but we still have to approach it with the assumption that it is. You've got Anthony Davis under 10K on DraftKings, LeBron James at 10.8. And then on FanDuel, you've got LeBron at 11.2 and Davis at 10.9, only $300 difference there, $900 difference on DraftKings.
Yeah, I'm still a little bit concerned about Davis's minutes because they said going into the last game that he was on a 28-minute restriction. And then because of the blowout, he didn't even get particularly close to that. Yeah, he only played 22 and a half minutes. So I have him in for 32 minutes, which at his price point and with all the other options on the slate, I'm just not really going to get there. LeBron's the more appealing of the two, but even he's not a priority for me because there are just so many good mid-range guys that I think have really high ceilings today. In their last game, it's worth noting that LeBron and Davis weren't completely staggered. You got some minutes for each of them without the other on the floor.
Davis got in foul trouble in the first 4 minutes of the game.
Right. Yeah. So that you got some minutes there for LeBron. And then like in the second quarter, they were staggered, but then going back to the third quarter, they weren't. So it was kind of a weird rotation, but either way, I think that, if I'm going to anything from the Lakers, it would be LeBron, but still just not someone that I think I'll get into a ton of my lineups. Yeah,
probably not. And then LeBron. So here's another thing. Davis had 5 fouls in the fourth. He had 3 going into the fourth, and then he picked up 2 quick ones. but him and LeBron came off the floor at the same time and never returned. They were down by 30 plus points. So it's tough to say. I think, as you pointed out, 32 minutes seems pretty appropriate here when you factor in blowout and foul trouble for Davis.
Yeah, and the fact that they might just not want him to play 37 minutes.
Right. Well, again, it's the Knicks too. So
right.
I think that seems right. Once you get past these guys for the Lakers, if there aren't any significant injuries, it's really tough to feel confident about anybody.
Yeah, you just basically have a bunch of guys that stand around and shoot when LeBron passes them the ball.
Which is not too often, yeah.
Right.
Like, dude, Channing Frye, if you remember, Channing Frye was only good when LeBron was on the floor.
Yep.
Because otherwise, nobody gave him the ball. Let's move on. Would you say this game, as the question I asked earlier, is one of those games that's just on all fronts pretty ugly?
Yeah, I kind of forgotten about this game when you asked the question. So yeah, I would say that so far, for the most part, it's been the Philly game, the OKC game, and in this game.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about Miami and Washington. Hey, by the way, I forgot. Actually, I didn't even know. I was just looking into it. Super Draft is running the $20,000 contest again today, and there's still a ton of entries to go. You guys ran in there and filled that thing up last time. Props to you. It definitely looked like it was going to come up way short. It didn't, but $4,000 up top again. So it's the Jump Shot, superdraft.io, or on the app. There's 772 out of 1933 right now. So I don't know. You do the math. Use that sign-up code AWESOMO if you weren't here at the beginning of the show. Get $20 in super cash. Miami and Washington. We've got the Miami Heat as big-time favorites. They opened at 10. It's 9.5 now. But you got a big total here, 229.5. Their 119.5 implied total right now is the third highest on the slate, only a fraction of a point behind the Celtics and the Pels. But you've got Pasicniks out for Washington. And then for Miami, there were a couple questionable players earlier in the day. Butler's been probable. Duncan Robinson questionable. No real significant injuries in this game outside of Pasicniks, which, while it doesn't seem relevant, it will add some more minutes to the front court that we can get into. But let's clear out the Miami Heat first.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Miami, so we're waiting on Duncan Robinson, who's a game time decision. If he's out, you get more minutes for James Johnson and for Derek Jones, most likely. Maybe also a little bit of a trickle down effect to someone like Tyler Hero, but overall, not a huge piece of news. The two pieces that obviously stand out for Miami are Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, who are both reasonably priced. Butler typically playing 34, 35 minutes in competitive games. Bam normally up around 36. Center, again, is a really stacked position, but it is a good matchup for both of these guys. Washington is a fast team. They don't play defense. They don't rebound particularly well. They're in the bottom third of the league in rebounds allowed and offensive rebounds allowed over the last month. So that looks pretty good for Bam. So him and Butler both look like good options.
Good options as in not priorities, but sure.
Yeah, good options as in I don't expect them to be like my highest owned guys, but if I ended up in that 20 to 30% range or something like that, I'd be perfectly fine.
Sometimes, we have a lot of people that watch the show that aren't MME players, that don't run 150 or 300 each time out, but other people that might play 3 or 1 or 2 lineups. Just to nail it down a bit, and I already know where you're going with it, but guys like Butler and Adebayo, if you were building a single lineup, is ownership low enough? Are they appealing enough for you to throw one of them into a single lineup entry?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm building one lineup, they're kind of guys where if I end up at their price point, I'm more than happy to play them. But I would slightly lean towards De'Aaron Fox as someone we've already talked about at the same price point as Butler. You have centers like Jokic that's more expensive and Montrezl Harrell that's less expensive than Bam. So they're both, I really like Bam and I really like Butler. So I wouldn't be upset if they're in my lineup. It's just that they're not the first guys in for me.
Right. Okay. Just want to clarify on that a little bit. I think a lot of times, newer players that don't play so many lineups can get confused on how it works when we're talking about prioritizing certain guys. What about the Washington side? Pretty decent Miami defense, but this game, like I said, 229.5 total. It should be a relatively fast-paced game. It is still a pace down spot for Washington, but not extremely significant. if or with Pasechnik's out of this one, Mo Wagner's still out, Rui is still out. Do you think that Jan Mahimi is going to back his way into another 28 minutes here, or are we giving him another 24?
I have it at 26 for him, 22 for Bryant.
Okay.
Last game, he dealt with some foul trouble, or I think he would have played more, that being Mahinmi.
That's why I asked. I
yeah.
thought so as well.
Yeah. But Bryant being the backup center now makes me hesitant to go much higher than that, because I think Bryant's going to get his 22 minutes. So it's tough to go much higher. So I have it at 26 for Mahinmi, 22 for Bryant. That doesn't make either one particularly appealing for me.
We saw Bryant and Mahimi start a couple games alongside each other, but those were against some bigger front courts. I guess you can't see that happening today, right?
The biggest reason that I would say no is because of Pasek Sneaks being out. If they started them next to each other, then you start getting into like weird rotations where you have to get Bryant off and then bring him back.
Right. How do you back up Mahimi unless it's Bryant, who you're going to have to stagger heavily?
And that was, I think, at least in my opinion, that was probably why Bryant didn't start last game, because that was the first game he didn't start next to Mahimi, and they brought him off the bench.
And it was against Detroit too.
Right.
I'm saying it's not exactly a tiny front court.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
In Detroit. I think if Mahimi comes in, could get the minutes. His price point's a little bit prohibitive for me, though. What about the rest of Washington? Do you like anybody from the Wizards today?
The only guy I would point out is Beal. He's just really cheap. He's 7,200 on both DraftKings and FanDuel. He played a little over 33 minutes last game, so slowly getting back to where his minutes, normally are. And he's a 1.22 DraftKings or 1.21 DraftKings points per minute player this year. If you assume average or even a little bit below average production, and you assume he's going to play 33 or 34 minutes, that makes him a pretty good value at 7,200.
And these were pretty balanced rotations too. They were very similar first, third quarter, second, and fourth quarter. I'm hoping that Scott Brooks is settling back into that. It's hard for me, even if we're looking to limit Beal and not give him 38 minutes per game. I don't know, Adam. It's hard for me to believe that even with Washington not being a contender, that Beal isn't going to start at least seeing the 32, 33 minutes per game consistently again.
Yeah, I agree. They'd also been in blowouts recently too, which helped limit his minutes.
Boston and Memphis. So significant pace up spot for the Celtics today. They're 7-point favorites in this one. They have a 119.8 implied total, 232.5 over under in this game. Hell, that might be the highest we've seen for a Boston game all season. Now, we did get some news here. I know Josh throughout the day was updating his contenders, T-E-N, top 10 guys of the day when Bagley was out, and then with Jaylen Brown out as well. So Jaylen Brown being sidelined in this one. Kemba Walker is officially in, by the way. Definitely shakes things up a bit, and it takes guys like Gordon Hayward transforming is the word I was looking for. Transforming him from a okay player to one of the better value plays on this slate.
Yeah, I think Boston as a team is one of the better values on the slate, just because you can look to so many guys that are underpriced given Jaylen Brown being out. In the last game that he missed, you got 40 minutes from Tatum, you got 38 from Kemba, you got 36 from Smart, 32 from Hayward. I'm not expecting, or I'm not projecting those upper end minutes for guys like Tatum or Kemba, but still, if you give 36 to Tatum, 34 to Kemba, and to Smart, they do grade out as good options at their prices. I also expect Stevens to stagger his rotations. In that last game without Jaylen, you had Tatum and Smart playing with the second unit with Kemba and Hayward playing together and going to the bench at the same time. So it does increase the production for all of those guys when Jaylen sits. He's around the 24% usage guy, but it also just affects the rotations in a way that benefits them. So I think Tatum is my number one guy from Boston, followed by Kemba, followed by Hayward, followed by Smart, but they all look like pretty good options.
Okay. Would that be site specific anywhere? Hayward's $5,800 on DraftKings and on FanDuel.
FanDuel, I would say Kemba number one. So as a whole, Boston's just better on FanDuel, but Kemba number one, Tatum number two, Hayward, Smart, and then Tice Scanner.
Okay. Rondo and Anthony Davis both available to play. We'll get to the Patrick Beverley news in a moment, but let's stick with this game. I think you just pretty much broke down everything we need to know for Boston. There's a lot of value there, just a great spot. And unsurprisingly, this is also a spot that is going to be seeing quite a bit of ownership. Gordon Hayward on DraftKings is projected for top 2 ownership. Kemba and Tatum, they're all in the top 10. Marcus Smart is pretty close as well. And just easily the most popular overall team, along with one other team that we'll get to. There are 2 teams today, Adam, that are easily the most popular, and it's not even close, and Boston's one of them.
Yeah, and it's for good reason. I mean, you're just taking minutes away, you're taking usage away, and even if Jaylen Brown were in, these would be pretty favorable price tags in a good matchup against a fast Memphis team that doesn't play much defense. Now you take him out, and it just becomes even better.
Absolutely. All right, let's flip this over to the Memphis side. Boston Celtics defensively, they're a strong team, and I don't think I'm telling any tales out of school here. They're a top 10 defensive team on the year. What are we doing with the Memphis Grizzlies in what is a 232 over/under game, but also not the most stellar of matchups? You do have Ja Morant's price tag, which has come down from the 8,200 he was at last time out. Jonas Valanciunas is $6,700 on DraftKings. That's the cheapest he's been in a week or two, and was seeing really solid minutes up until last time out. I want to start with those 2 guys, the 2 big names on this Memphis squad.
Yeah, Valanciunas is the one that stands out to me the most. In the context of the slate, he's still not a priority for me, but he does very clearly have a lot of upside at 6,700 on DraftKings, 6,800 on FanDuel. I'm not too concerned about him playing 21 minutes last game because that was a game where the Pelicans were missing Favors and Okafor, and so they started Hayes and then ended up starting the second half with Melly and kind of just playing 5 out and just shooting threes the entire game. And so it just ended up being a really weird matchup for Valanciunas to be on the floor. Prior to that, we'd seen 32, 28, 29, 30 minutes from him. Yeah. Now you have a Boston front court where you're going to get a lot of Daniel Tice and Enes Kanter. Not quite the same as in that Pelicans matchup. So I have Valanciunas back in at 28 minutes here. And, again, it's more that the center position is super weak that keeps his exposure in check for me. But he is one of my favorite centers in his price range.
Yeah, and you look at the guy's production on the season, you can't rely on him because his minutes have fluctuated so much, but he's also a 1.33 DraftKings point per minute player. So when those minutes are there for Joe Val, you have the monster upside that you generally don't get from guys at this price point. Are there any secondary or tertiary guys for Memphis that you're interested in?
Not really. I just don't really like the price points too much on these guys. You're also just getting, Morant's minutes have been up, but outside of that, not a ton of minutes for guys like Dylan Brooks played, I think, 35 minutes last game, but normally he's playing 28 to 30. DeAnthony Melton backing him up keeps his minutes in check. So it's tough for me to get to anything other than Jovo.
Atlanta Hawks, LA Clippers. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh my God. That's the amount of Clippers players from an ownership perspective that are in the top 10 today. So them in Boston pretty much occupying all of that space as your most popular players. The LA Clippers, 3.5 point favorites right now on the road in Atlanta, 234.5 total. So among all the games on this slate, Boston is the 3rd highest total. This one is the 2nd highest between the Clippers and the Hawks. I know they're the road team, but let's get now. You know what? Let's get Atlanta out of the way first, because we're gonna have to spend quite a bit of time on this Clippers team with the amount of guys that are sidelined today. On Atlanta, you don't have quite as much, but I guess the question number one, DeAndre Bembry is out, confirmed, and then you have Alex Len, questionable with that back injury, and now popped up that Trae Young is also questionable to play here. He's got a right thigh contusion, and apparently it happened in Monday's game against Toronto. That throws a wrench into the works.
Yeah, because I think that Trae Young's an awesome play if he's in. You
especially with
talk,
Pat Beverly doubtful.
yeah, Beverly, Leonard, and George all out. That Clippers defense that's been so good this year is just not the same without those three guys, obviously. And you're talking about a pretty cheap price tag on Trae Young. So if he's in, I think he's one of my favorite plays on the slate. If he's out, obviously it changes everything for Atlanta because you would get Jeff Teague as a good value at 4K. You would get more minutes going and more productive minutes going to guys like Kevin Herter and Cam Reddish as well. John Collins' usage rate will go up. So the entire landscape would change for Atlanta.
Nerlens Noel is available to play. Steven Adams is a game time decision. So we'll see where this one takes us. So the Trae Young thing, I'm with you. If he plays, you really have to like Trae Young in this spot. I mean, a lot. And I think $9,500 on DraftKings. I know it was a tough matchup on paper before the whole Beverly thing and all, but 9,500 is really cheap for what we've gotten from Trae Young all year long.
Yeah, he's a 1.36 DraftKings point per minute guy for the season. Since John Collins came back a month ago, he's at 1.48, which, again, you're talking about a smaller sample, so you're not reading into that as much, but it clearly hasn't hurt him. The assists have gone up. The usage has been about the same. It's just a really weird price. It's really weird for his price to come down the way it has. And then it's probably that he's priced down because of how tough the matchup against the Clippers is, but the problem is that it's not a tough matchup today. So it just ends up being a great price point for Trae Young. We also just got news that Dwayne Dedmon is starting.
Yep. Dwayne Dedmon starting. So I do want to ask you before we talk about the Clippers, and you touched on it a little bit, but this is a really important one. If Trae Young sits, does Jeff Teague become one of the best value options on the entire slate?
I think so. The only thing that would keep him from being that is if Atlanta just doesn't want to play him. But I don't have anything that tells me that's the case. So if Young's out, I don't really know what to do other than to give Teague like 28 minutes or something like that. And that would clearly at 4K make him a top option.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's getting all the backup minutes at point guard. Last game he played 11. Trae Young played 39. Game prior to that, a monster blowout loss to the Pistons. Jeff Teague ended up playing 25 minutes. So my assumption is that he would definitely get the minutes if Trae Young is out. I would be surprised to see Brandon Goodwin get the start now that Jeff Teague is here. And Goodwin basically removed from the rotation for all but a minute or two since Teague came to town.
Yeah, my assumption would be something like 28, 30 minutes for Teague, like 18 for Goodwin.
That's what I would have as well. Anything else for Atlanta?
Just the reminder that if Young is out, it's a benefit for Herter and Reddish too.
Yep. Now, the Clippers are just dealing with a litany of injuries, injuries, rest, whatever you want to call it. But Paul George is out. Kawhi Leonard is out. Knee, illness, rest, who knows. Patrick Beverly not going to play in this one either. So 3 injuries to starters, significant starters to say the least. I mean, that just opens everything up. Like I said when we started this game off, Williams, Harrell, Landry Shamet, even guys like J. Michael Green and Zubats, all of these guys come into play. Let's go one by one and try and break this one down.
Yeah, so I think that among the non-Lou Williams, Harrell guys, it's a mess because we've seen it already this year that Doc Rivers kind of will play the hot hand in these situations. But I think that JaMychal Green is the most appealing option to me outside of the guys that are normally appealing options. He's only 4,400 on DraftKings. He played 26 minutes yesterday. I would expect to get, at least in the mid-20s for him today. He's 4,400 on FanDuel as well. Without George or Kawhi on the floor this year, he's averaged 0.92 DraftKings points per minute. He has a 15.5% usage rate, 16.5% rebounding percentage. So he looks like a pretty good value to me. Looking at our ownership projections, we have Landry Shamet as the 4th highest owned guy on DraftKings right now. Crazy. At $3,800. He projects as a good point per dollar option, but my argument against him at that kind of ownership is that no matter who you take off the floor for the Clippers, he's not a high usage guy. He's got a 13% usage rate without Kawhi or George in 241 minutes this year. He's averaged 0.54 DraftKings points per minute over that time. Even if you give him 36 minutes today, if you account for the matchup, it's just still, you're talking about someone that projects for 21 fantasy points or around 21 fantasy points, and a quarter or 20% of the field's playing him. I think I can just find ways around that.
I mean, he's got his assist rate with both of them out the floor, 7%, 3% rebound rate, no usage whatsoever. The only benefit here is that you would hope that he would get more minutes than he normally does, but I'm not really sure how many more minutes he would get.
Right. So, I mean, he played 36 minutes yesterday. I'm not giving him like 42.
I know. That's what I'm saying. Like, and he also shot 5 for 8 from beyond the arc, which isn't necessarily commonplace. He's a decent enough scorer, but you are not going to get much else. I'm with you here. At that ownership, assuming it doesn't come down, Landry Shamet is one guy that I think it's very unlikely that he's going to kill you if you fade him.
Right. It just goes back to the difference in tournaments between between like value and what you actually need from guys or want from guys. Is there a good chance that I think Shamet hits whatever 5.5x or 6x value you people think is value? Then yeah, probably. Like I said, he projects for around 21 fantasy points for me. If that's but that's not good enough in tournaments, even at a $3,800 price tag, and he just doesn't have a ton of volatility because of the type of player he is. He's still going to be dealing with Lou Williams. He's still going to be dealing with Harrell. It's just still not. If you were low owned, then sure, I would take my chances on him. But at his ownership, I think he's a pretty easy guy to just be finding pivots to.
How many minutes are you giving Zubats?
I give Zubats 19. I give Harrell 29.
Okay. So are we assuming that they once again only play the center position, specifically Montrezl Harrell?
That's my assumption, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I would think so.
So, I mean, because they still have Patterson, they still have Green, they still have Harkless.
Exactly. Yeah, it's the thing. I mean, I don't expect a lot of minutes from Patterson, but you have to go out. You have to assume that JaMychal Green is once again going to get a decent amount of minutes. Who's your favorite value? Your top 2 value plays from the Clippers?
JaMychal's my number 1 value from the Clippers, and then I would say Zubats just because he's 4,100, but he's someone that I don't think I'll get to much of because the opportunity cost is so high. It's really tough to roster a center today that you're expecting to play around 20 minutes.
Would you still be unwilling to play Zubats with Montrezl Harrell?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to do that either, especially not when it's unlikely that he even plays 20 minutes. And if he does, right, Montrezl Harrell probably only plays 28.
Right. I was going to say, like, if Zubats has the kind of game that you want in a tournament, chances are it's because I was wrong on his minutes projection and Harrell played less minutes than I've projected.
Exactly.
So I wouldn't want them together.
How much of a priority, stupid question, but I'm asking you anyway. What's up?
I said just all of the priority. I know what the question is.
Yeah, I mean, how much of a priority today are Harrell and Lou Williams, and how much do you anticipate having of these guys?
As much as I can get to. They look like 2 of the top plays on the slate to me. Without George or Kawhi on the floor this year, 1.33 DraftKings points per minute with a 35% usage rate, 41% assist percentage for Lou Williams. For Harrell, he's averaged 1.27 DraftKings points per minute, 31.6% usage rate. These 2 guys should be a large portion of the Clippers offense here. It's a good matchup against Atlanta. They're fast. They don't play defense. These guys are both cheap. If I lose tonight because Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell suck against the Hawks without Paul George and Kawhi, then so be it.
Taking Beverly off the floor is no small thing either from a minute standpoint. Houston, Denver. We got 5 games to go here. If you haven't done so yet and you want to get 50% off your first week of Awesemo Plus Platinum All Access subscription, use the sign-up code, the promo code Deeper Dive when you check out. Deeper Dive, all one word, gets you 50% off your first week. You're looking at ownership projections, player projections, the lineup builder, all of our premium articles, the premium Slack chat where we're all talking DFS around the clock. So much more too that we don't have time to get through all of it because we got to get to all of these games. But if you want to see what we have to offer, go to awesemo.com/join and scroll to the bottom. You'll see video tutorials on all of our top tools, all of which have been developed and used every day by Awesemo himself. So head over to awesemo.com/join. Use that promo code Deeper Dive, one word. It'll get you 50% off your first week. I think you'll like it. And then you'll want to hang around. Talk DFS with us all day in Slack chat as well. Which
Trae Young ruled out.
Sorry?
Trae Young is out.
Whew. There it is. Well, good thing we just broke all of it down a minute ago. We don't even need to circle back there. Jeff Teague, to me, becomes a fantastic play. Maybe I'm wrong and he only plays 22 minutes and Goodwin plays 26, but Jeff Teague's way too cheap in this spot.
Yeah, I expect he'll be one of my highest owned guys now.
Houston and Denver. What do you got?
Alex Len is in also. Don't think the Len news makes a big difference.
I can't imagine it does.
Yeah. Denver, Houston, another game that I guess actually isn't from a DFS standpoint super appealing. Harden, I think, projects as the highest scorer on the slate, but with how many guards there are in the mid-range that have a lot of upside, it's kind of tough for me to prioritize him. It's also worth pointing out that Denver does generally do a decent job of scheming against Harden. In the 2 meetings so far this year, he's taken less field goal attempts than Russell Westbrook in both games. Westbrook didn't have good games either, but Malone generally does a pretty good job of figuring out ways to get the ball out of Harden's hands. So that's just, kind of one more thing working against him. But, still, if you can get there, fine, but it's a lot more of a luxury than a necessity for me on this slate. Westbrook, kind of the same thing. He's cheaper, obviously, and a really high upside play as well. But when you have just all of these guards, whether it's Kemba, now you have the guard value with Jeff Teague, you have just so many guards that we've talked about already and more to come as well. It's just really hard for me to pay up for those guys. Clint Capella is another one that in a vacuum I think looks like a good option. He was in foul trouble last game, so he didn't play as many minutes as usual, but you're normally getting 34 to 36 minutes from him in competitive games. The issue that I run into is just that you have Jokic at the position, you have Harrell at the position. So it's kind of like it's a really good play, but it's still a secondary play for me.
Jeff Teague officially starting.
All right, good.
I'm giving him 30 minutes. I'm going to let it roll.
Yep.
Do you want to talk about the other side of this one for Denver? You mentioned Jokic. Did you go Denver yet? I was trying to catch
I didn't
up on
do Denver yet. No.
Okay. You mentioned that you liked Jokic today earlier in the show. How are you getting to Jokic now? And does any of this injury news change anything for some of the guys that you liked earlier?
Yeah, so I absolutely love Jokic here. He's right now projected for 8% ownership on DraftKings at $9,200, which to me is absolutely insane. For a couple of reasons. For one, we know that 9,200 for Jokic is a really good price anyway, but we've seen one of the biggest things holding him back from a DFS standpoint this year has been his playing time. Now you have Mason Plumlee out. A big reason why his playing time's down is not because he can't play more minutes. It's because he has a good backup in Plumlee, and it's really tough to, on a consistent basis, be playing Plumlee like 12 minutes. Now you don't really have a backup center there. So I have Jokic in for 36 minutes. I think that's a very reasonable projection. Maybe you could go 34, 35 would be a little bit better if you're like to get a median outcome. But either way, like if I give him 34 minutes, he's projecting as a really good play. And I just think the extra minutes should be there. And then on top of that, you still have Millsap and Murray out. You have Gary Harris questionable. Without Murray and Millsap on the floor since the start of last season, Jokic's usage rate is up over 30%. His assist percentage is up over 30%. And he's averaged 1.49 DraftKings points per minute. So I really don't know why he's not getting ownership, but I think he should be, and I'll be getting a lot of him. So he's a priority for me.
Man, I can't think of the last time we've had such a big slate where ownership is going to be so heavily concentrated at the top.
Yeah, which I think makes it just as a quick reminder from a roster construction standpoint, you don't have to fade every popular guy. You want, especially in NBA, and I know Alex has talked about it a lot, the best way normally to approach it is to have a chalky lineup that has one or two lower owned guys. And so on slates like this, it ends up actually being really easy to create lineups like that still have a lot of upside, because you have the very obvious good plays, and then there's these lower owned guys that are still really good plays. So you don't even have, it's not even like you're making ugly lineups to be different, which I like.
It's funny. I was going to segue that, or I was going to ask you a question based on that, but you pretty much already answered it. Nikola Jokic is one of those guys to you that could be the differentiator.
Yeah, exactly. I did go ahead and knock my minutes projection on him down to 34 just because 36 probably was a little aggressive, but even with that, he looks like a great center option for me.
Do you like anybody else from either side of this game?
Not really. If Jeremy Grant is still, they priced him up on DraftKings. He's still 4,200 on FanDuel, so he looks really good there. So does Monte Morris. Grant, I would expect, gets back up center minutes behind Jokic, so he should be a little bit more productive than usual. Michael Porter is still cheap on FanDuel as well, so keep an eye out on Gary Harris news there. But Porter should get 28, around 28 minutes again, I would think.
Even if you're not playing anyone from this game and you're not a premium Awesemo subscriber, you can be invested in this one because we're giving away 2 Awesemo Plus monthly passes, all access monthly passes, and 1 monthly pass to whoever predicts the total of the Rockets and Nuggets game. Take a look at that over under, get an idea. If you predict the total exactly, we're going to give away 2 Awesemo Plus monthly passes. Closest total that stays under, Price is Right rules, wins 1 monthly pass as well. All you got to do is head over to Awesemo_com and Awesemo NBA. Follow those accounts. Retweet it, like, and reply with your answer, and put yourself in the running for an Awesemo Plus monthly pass and 1 monthly pass. So exact total, giving away 2 Awesemo Plus monthly passes. Closest total under the actual total gets a monthly pass. Head over to Awesemo_com and get that done. Also, check out our free content today. Alex's Awesemo live premium blog, PGA ownership projections, and NHL ownership projections are all free over at awesemo.com. So check that out as well. Chicago and Minnesota. So much value has opened up, man. So much that I think some of these games might have had some appeal earlier. I'll speak for myself. And now they're not nearly as high on the radar as they were, but you have a 220.5 total. Should be close. Minnesota Timberwolves 1-point favorites here in Chicago.
Yeah, I think that Levine's really the only guy from the Chicago side that stands out to me. It's a fast Minnesota team. They're not great defensively. Levine's been playing really well, usage rate up around 32, 33%, and playing 36 minutes in competitive games. But, again, there's, like you said, there's so much value. You already had a really deep guard position. Now you add Jeff Teague to that. You can only roster so many guards. So Levine's another example of the kind of guy where I think he's a really good play. I also completely understand why he won't get much ownership or shouldn't get much ownership. So he's the kind of guy that you can use to differentiate in your tournament lineups and still have a lot of upside.
Anything else from Chicago or over on the Minnesota side?
Minnesota, I think it's worth pointing out that Towns played 35 minutes last game. So seemingly not on restriction anymore. For the season, he's obviously been about a 1.5 fantasy point per minute guy. You have a Chicago front court that's missing its top 2 centers with more value opening up. It's obviously easier to get to Towns as well. So I would still, if I'm just choosing between the two of them and ignoring kind of what the rest of my roster looks like, I would take the $1,200 savings on Jokic still. But Towns does look a bit easier to get to now than he was when we started the show.
Okay. Towns the only one. Any Wiggins interest or anybody else?
Wiggins is fine. He's more appealing where you can roster him at forward than guard.
Yeah. Just a game that might have, like I said, had more appeal earlier. Right now, I'd say pretty much all secondary options. Eric asked, what were your priorities again? We'll get to, I'll answer that after the show because I want to make sure we get through all of these games. Phoenix and Indiana. And then we got New Orleans, San Antonio coming up. That's the second highest, the highest total on this slate. Phoenix and Indiana, however, 221.5 total. Another should be close game. Pacers 1.5 point favorites on the road. So Aaron Baines is out of this one. There's that. Cameron Johnson, I believe he's not expected to play. He's doubtful as well. So those are really only 2 big pieces you have. Well, one piece significant, and it's really not even that significant now that DeAndre Ayton's minutes have been ramped up in the starting lineup. Aaron Holiday questionable on the other side. Not a ton of moving parts here.
No, and I think it's a pretty unappealing matchup for Phoenix going against a slow Indiana team that plays well defensively. I will point out Ayton and to a lesser extent Booker, but both of them fit the mold as your tournament differentiation plays as well. Ayton coming off a game where he played 38 minutes without Baines. We had seen, I think, 36 the game before that. So getting huge minutes for him. He's been like a 1.2 fantasy point per minute guy this year. He's
and only
still a good
8,200 on FanDuel. That's a pretty good price.
You said he's how much?
82. I mean, he's 86 on DraftKings, 82 on FanDuel.
Yeah, 82 is a really good salary there. So yeah, a better play on FanDuel for sure. And I think the minutes are just really, really appealing. It's just really hard for someone like him to fail if he's going to play 36 plus minutes.
Um, do, it is a tough matchup. It is a pace down spot. Like, does Rubio at 6,100 on FanDuel? Uh, is that enough? Like, with so much guard value, the crazy thing is, even at 6,100, there's just so many good guards today.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I'm obviously much more interested in him on FanDuel than on DraftKings, but you're still talking about, like, if I just look at point guard on FanDuel, I have him right now as my third guy behind Kemba and Teague.
Do you like anything from the Pacers?
Not really. I mean, I like the matchup, but I think that in the context of the slate, even though Malcolm Brogdon is a little bit underpriced and Domantas Sabonis is a little bit underpriced, there's just guys that are a lot more underpriced.
I think Sabonis on DraftKings at 7,900 is very reasonable. Um, outside of him, though, I don't really take a big liking to anybody. Sabonis will be the guy, and then Ayton on FanDuel, I think at 8,200 is still very appealing. His ownership, last I looked, really not getting a ton of it. DeAndre Ayton is getting 9%, so nothing crazy. Anyway, let's move it on. New Orleans and San Antonio. Got 2 to go here, and then we'll toss it over to our live before lock friends. Take you up till 7. 236 total. 119.8 implied for the Pelicans is the highest on the slate. They're 3.5 point favorites against the Spurs. What are you doing with the Pels?
I'm not getting to much of New Orleans outside of 5K Zion. I think is pretty appealing. I I really, I mean, I don't think anyone has a great idea of how to project this because we have no idea how to project it. You just obviously have a lot of mouths to feed. You already had a lot of mouths to feed, and now you have Zion coming back as well. My assumption, or I think that it's reasonable to think that guys like Ingram, Lonzo, Drew all take at least somewhat of a hit now that Zion's back, and their prices were up for their current roles or their roles prior, so they're naturally a little bit overpriced. Zion, I have no idea how many minutes he plays. I haven't seen an actual number on him, but he is starting or expected to start.
I have him at 18, and that might even be high.
I was thinking I had him at 22, and I was thinking that might be low.
Really?
Just because
He's
yeah,
out
I mean,
for 3 months.
he's been practicing for like a month though.
I know, but he's their prized first overall pick. Like, I can't imagine they're not going to have some bubble wrap on him.
Well, yeah, I like if he plays 22 minutes, I'd consider that bubble wrap.
Sure. I'm saying I don't know if that's low, though. I don't know. I don't even, there's no point of even arguing this.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, and I agree. Like, I have no idea. If he played 26 minutes today, I wouldn't be shocked. If he played 18, I wouldn't be shocked.
Okay. It says the rookie reportedly won't have a hard minutes restriction upon his return, though he's initially expected to play around 15 to 20 minutes as the Pelicans ease him back. I'd have to look where that's actually coming from, but yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, he was more appealing to me earlier in the day anyway. Now that all this other stuff's opened up, it's a situation where why am I looking at the 5K guy where I have no idea how many minutes he plays or how he produces compared to like the 4K Jeff Teague where I know exactly how he produces.
Do you like the Spurs?
I do, specifically Aldridge and DeRozan. Aldridge's salary is really affordable. He's 6,800 on DraftKings, 75 on FanDuel. One negative about him is that his rebounding has really been down lately. He's been taking more 3-point attempts, and I'm assuming the reason is that he hasn't been rebounding as well. DeRozan has been seeing an uptick in rebounds, but also his assist percentage over the last month is at 30%, usage rates at 28%. So I really like DeRozan, and if I get to some Aldridge, that's fine too.
Let's close it out. Golden State and Utah. And if you guys enjoy the show, you want to help support us, the simplest way to do so is just by clicking thumbs up. We appreciate all of you guys that tune in every day. Thumbs up, hit that notification bell, and subscribe as well so we can keep doing what we do, pumping out free content every day. We're up against it. A lot of games today. Golden State and Utah. I'll let you close us out here.
Yeah, not a ton here. You do have Draymond back. You have Glenn Robinson.
Steven Adams is out.
Okay, so Noel becomes a better play. For Golden State, you have Glenn Robinson back. You have Draymond not on the injury report. So assuming he suits up, you have more bodies here. It's not the same situation that we had against Portland, which in this spot against Utah makes them really unappealing. From the Utah side, Mitchell and Gobert are both secondary options for me. There's not a lot I'm prioritizing or anything I'm prioritizing in this game.
All right. Hey, that'll do it for us. Thanks for tuning in as always. Stick around. Live Before Lock is coming up next. They're going to take you till 7 p.m. You've got Eddie and Josh. See you back here tomorrow, same time on the Deeper Dive.
People, live before lock Wednesday, January 22nd, and boy, do we have a heck of a slate. Things are blowing up, clear across the board. I'm making sure that I'm not on mute, and it's good to see that my mic mixer is bouncing. I am not on mute, so this is going to be a fun one. We are brought to you by Super Draft. I'm going to give you the Super Draft pitch because I honestly love this mechanism. Instead of having to worry about salaries, you're worrying about a multiplier. You can roster everybody. If you want to roster LeBron James, Anthony Davis, James Harden, Russell Westbrook, Karl Anthony Towns, you could roster everybody.
All of them. Same team.
Yeah. All in the same run. You would never be able to do that on any of the other sites. But at Super Draft you can because of the multiplier. Those guys are likely going to be just 1x guys. If you roster someone like, I don't know, Dennis Schroeder, because he's on my screen and in front of my face, he might be like 1.3, 1.4. You get to multiply their score in the end by that multiplier, brings everybody's scores up. So you're going to need those big 70, 80 point days out of the studs because if you get someone like Schroeder going for 45 or 50 and he hits that multiplier, he's just as good. Changing up the game. They've got contests for NBA. NFL's winding down, but they have that. PGA, MLB coming soon. You could hit up their app store to sign up if you'd like, or you can just go to superdraft.io, use the promo code AWESEMO, get yourself a free $20 in super cash with your first deposit of $100 or more. I believe their biggest contest is looking like it's going to overlay. I want to pull it up one last time just to check it out. But you should be chasing that kind of money. Anytime that you can see overlay in the industry, that should be the first place you look to enter a contest. Sure enough, the $20,000 jump shot 4K to first has 982 people out of 1,900. It is half full with 54 minutes to go. That's $4,000 on top, guys. Ignoring it. Even if you guys think that all I'm doing is shilling this, listen to what I'm saying. There is potentially free money in the industry available for you today. That is all you need
Steven Adams is out.
Yeah, that one hit it.
Sorry, I just got to go remake my rankings for the 13th time.
Should be fun.
Okay, no problem.
I just started to do that as we were starting the show. I haven't even pulled him out yet. But go check out Super Draft. There is money to be had, people. There's money to be had, and you should want that money. Anytime that you can get in contests with legitimate overlay, in this case, likely covering the entire rake, you should check it out. There's an hour to go, and it's looking like it's not going to fill. So be the guy that brings it closer at the very least. Love you, Super Draft. Big fan. We also have a giveaway going on. I'm pulling it up on the screen right now. 2 giveaways, actually. Depends on which one you're looking for. One is a potential giveaway. We are trying to get our Awesemo NFL account to 5,000 followers before the Super Bowl. If we do that, we will be staging our biggest giveaway ever. We have 4,484 right now. So head to twitter.com/AwesemoNFL or just search for it. If you'd like, you'll get there pretty easily. I'm sure someone's going to come along and drop it in the YouTube chat as well. Go ahead and follow. We're going to do a massive giveaway if we hit 5K before the Super Bowl. So you want to be there before we do it. And then you could also go to Awesemo NFL, check out a pinned tweet of Price is Right giveaway. Got to be retweeting, liking, replying, and following Awesemo NFL and Awesemo NBA. If you get the total exactly right, we'll be giving away 2 Awesemo Plus monthly passes. Or the closest person to the total of the Rockets-Nuggets game without going over will win a monthly pass. All of the details are in these pinned tweets, so please go and check them out now. Free content for today, PGA ownership. We've got Ben Rasa and Jason Roslin coming up at 8:30 tonight to talk about the waste management. I've already forgot. Farmers only open.
Farmers. I don't think it's farmers only. It's not like a dating website.
Yeah. Farmers Insurance, I believe. They'll be up at 8:30. And Awesemo's live blog. Very, very essential today with all of the news coming out. That is free today. Head over to awesemo.com right now. Check out Alex's live blog where he is updating that to the news that is coming out. Gotta check it out. Eddie, did I kill enough time for you?
Nope.
No,
I'm almost there, though. I'm almost there to start with some of your high points on the slate, and I'm going to be there in 30 seconds. I'm on iteration 11 here.
I'm going to slowly update for the Steven Adams news, which is pretty massive, all things considered. Nerlens Noel is usually fantastic in these scenarios with Steven Adams out. Steven Adams, generally speaking, rarely out. Not a guy that misses a ton of time. Figure I'm going to give Noel, I don't know, some 24 minutes. He hasn't been playing big minutes. In the last game that Adams missed, Noel only played 21 and a half. Not entirely sure if Adams was in any foul trouble or not there. Previous to that, were they both out? Or is that? No, that was Gallo.
No, it's been one or the other most of the time.
We'll also see Mike Muscala is going to be a thing today, I guess. Is always fun.
Just changed his rank.
Spoiler alert. What is Mike Muscala's rank now?
God, you're really gonna make me scroll. I'm so busy. I think
when you said I assumed it was like the next.
I think he's a C in cash and a B in tournaments at 3,500. His production is a little whatever, and I think the more likely distribution of minutes there is like 28-20 Noel based on what I'm looking at reporters right now. So I think Noel should get into the mid to high 20s, but they should split the 48 at center. Yeah. But he's with the preponderance of other amazing plays that just knocks value guys down.
Yep.
So you need last game. I mean, if Noel had been out, I would have been a massive fan of his. Last game he played 20 whatever minutes, but that was on the back of some very significant foul trouble. But you're also living in the world of starting Dwayne Dedman, and so there's just a lot going on here. So it's really hard to get to him with Noel in front of him now.
Nerlens Noel, 4K on FanDuel, 4,400 on DraftKings, 8,900 on Fantasy Draft, and $13 on Yahoo. Coming up clear across the board as an excellent value. And the good news is, I guess this is good news, Nerlens Noel is a power forward on FanDuel. He has now become the clear best power forward option relative to salary. Doesn't complicate matters by being at center with obvious clear center option Montrezl Harrell.
Yeah, I have him not like I'm a massive fan of Nemanja Bjelica in this spot. So like I have him, I still have Noel well better at 4K because of the value, but I have Bjelica projected for like 6 more fantasy points. So at 5,400, he's one of the 38 mispriced players on FanDuel today. So like he's in a particularly brilliant spot. I mean, he's not as mispriced as I don't know, minimum price Shamet, Lou Williams, Montrezl Harrell, Nerlens Noel. Like, there's a lot of guys who are mispriced on FanDuel today to a fairly ridiculous degree, but I'm a pretty big fan of getting Bielitz in there.
Yeah, that's sort of something I kind of wanted to talk about. I don't know if we have that sort of time, but I'm going to buy a couple minutes or two for you.
Appreciate that.
People look at this or run a crunch, and all they see are stars names for the most part, because there is so much value out there. This slate is terrible. These guys are all still relative to each other. You just need more of everything else across the board.
Yep.
To me, there are a minimal amount of guys that stand out. Lou Williams, Montrezl Harrell stand out clear above the field to me, and I would assume clear above the field to anybody that's looking at it for today. They're missing three
it's
starters.
Nice we do have a reason with Trae Young out now. This I'm going to start a conversation point, then you can talk for a second. I've just finished this. This should be in about 20 seconds. But I have great concerns with how badly the Hawks are going to get destroyed. Yeah. We had this last week where we were like, oh, look at all this Atlanta value and all this is going to go this way and this whatever. And then the Hawks were so ungodly terrible. We had this game earlier this year with Kawhi out and Patrick Beverley out against the Hawks. They played the Clippers. Do you know what the Clippers won that game by?
44.
49.
Ooh, that's not bad.
Like, so I'm just saying, if you're heavily invested in this game, and I am, okay, I have Lou Williams at 50 fantasy points on 27 shot attempts in any sort of vaguely even game.
Right.
It's my huge concern is nobody plays more than 26 minutes because they lose this game by 60. This is a very, very bad Hawk. Now, we'll see what happens with Teague. Hard not to like 4K Teague. Gotta like you some Jeff Teague. But my concern with any investment in this game is that this game turns into a ridiculous shit show.
Yeah.
I'm also really curious what the betting line is right now. Because once you take Trae Young off this team, it's been bad. They've always been a horrific team defensively, but they had Trae Young and some pretty nifty stuff on the other end of the court. You got a nice comeback the other day against the Raptors. They do some interesting stuff, and they're a lot of fun to watch, and they're all kids. So, God bless them. But you take Trae off this team. You have Cam Reddish and DeAndre Hunter, who are, I'll be very gentle, unrefined as offensive basketball players at this stage of their careers. Then you have whoever is manning center, which tonight,
apparently is Bruno Fernando starting.
Right, exactly. Right. So you have Fernando or Damian Jones, neither of which can do much on that end of the court. So it's literally like, John Collins, can you get 45 and 30? Otherwise, this team isn't going to do anything on that end of the court. This makes John Collins a more interesting GPP play for me, because if this game stays close, he should have some completely ridiculous stat line. Maybe Cam Reddish gets there. We've had 2 good Cam Reddish games this year where he takes a ton of shots and gets 7 steals and you get that game, but I would be woefully. That's my concern. Otherwise, everyone looks obviously brilliant, kind of on both sides of the ball here, and we should get into specifics in a minute and talk about who's going to play in a blowout. But again, we had this game. Now, the nice thing is, if you go back and box score that one, and again, Paul George was in that game, so clearly that makes this. Sorry, doing literally 4 things at once. Paul George was in that game. And even he was good in his 20 minutes. Like, he paid off his salary in his 20 minutes. Oh, that was
like his first game or second game back? He went bonkers?
I think at 20 minutes he had 37 and 6 and some other goodies and some stuff like that. Like, he had a perfectly equitable performance. And all the guys in there next to him were ridiculously productive. So I will look at that in a second. But it's worth stating that, okay, in theory, that should have done it. Someone check and tell me if my rankings are up. First time this year we've gone that late. I really apologize, but I hope you can understand size of the slate. Every time I went to put in a provisional, and then I was checking something else, and then with this guy out. So
it's a hell of a day, man. Everyone. It's a hell of a day.
Yeah, but that's something I try to avoid doing this year. Okay, so let's talk Turkey and all. There we go. Hawks at Clippers. They were in LA, which is relevant when you're looking at this. So the Clippers, in that game, you had Terrence Mann start and play 33 minutes. And this was the one halfway decent Terrence Mann game. Played most minutes on either team, by the way, but also played the very significant blowout run alongside the other bench guys. So that's why. But 13 points, 6 rebounds, 8 assists. The other guy out for this game was also Landry Shamet. So you're not going to get that out of Terrence Mann again. Let me get that out there right now. He's fallen down in the rotation. He'll be in the blowout 5 at the end of the game, which seems reasonably likely to happen. Nothing's ever sure. That was his 33 minutes. Harkless started and played 28 minutes. Not a weird thing for today. 6 points, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks. That almost gets you there. Paul George, 20 minutes, 37, 4, 3, 2, and 1. I was close. Rodney Magruder, 18 minutes, 6, 2, and 2. Okay, so Rodney Magruder failed spectacularly. Ivica Zubac, 17 minutes, 7 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists, 4 blocks. Jerome Robinson off the bench, 21 points, 4 rebounds, 1 assist, 2 steals, and 2 blocks. Montrezl Harrell didn't get there. 23 minutes, 17, 4, 2, and 1. A little bit disappointing blowout run. I'll do that for you. You had Kabengele playing center in the blowout run period of time. So his minutes were truncated. But again, this was a Hawks team with a couple more center options. They had all of them there. That given day, JaMychal Green, 21 minutes off the bench, 2, 9, 2, and 4 steals. So, there were like 9 Clippers who played that day any reasonable period. There were 9 Clippers who played 17 minutes or more. 7 of them were fine, 6 were good, and 3 were outstanding. So even in a preposterous blowout last time, my point being, I just redid the Clippers for, the 11th time. They all still have a whole lot of A's and B's smattered across that entire team. There's just so much minutes and so much usage for everyone. It's really hard not to get there. I've heard concerns about Landry Shamet. I think they are warranted. What is his current ownership?
It was massive on DraftKings. Pull in our most recent update just to double check. We got an update 34 seconds ago, so shout out to the team behind the scenes. Landry Shamet, 25% owned on DraftKings right now. That is a little bit behind highest owned player, Jeff Teague, at 38.
Okay, so I would come in under on both of those numbers. And again, generally on any chalky guys, I will come in under. But the reason to come in under on chalky value guys, and this is obvious, but needs to be said for the follow-up, there are other guys at that price who are just going to outscore them. Yeah. And there are 307 very good value plays today. So they could be 1-1 at those respective price points, but that's incredibly unlikely. So obviously you have to have some. They look great. Teague, at 4K, I have him in for 28 minutes. There are other ways this can, you have 28 exactly. There are other ways this can go. He's starting. We found that out. So that's obviously most of your concern. He's absolutely fine. Go ahead and lock him in cash. Yeah. No issues with your Defty. Very good fantasy producer. The matchup is not nearly as bad as it's going to look in any paper analysis because the best 3 defending players on the other team are out. That matters pretty significantly if you look at it. They still are an above average defensive team with all those guys out, but not nearly the monster they are. Yeah. So, get yourself on some Jeffers, but if they get destroyed, you may get 19 minutes of Jeff Teague here. They have Brandon Goodman. They have Kevin Huerter. They have a lot of other guys who handle the ball on this team. So I like Jeff Teague a lot. 38% on a slate this size is just wrong. It's just wrong. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm not going to look at your Jeff Teague line. If you say I have 80% Jeff Teague, okay, he could go out there and be the best scoring 4K and under player. He could get 40 for you today. That's a real possibility. Jeff Teague, did it with regularity in Minnesota. But if you play the slate out 100 times and you can have 38% Jeff Teague or less would be the correct answer more often or not. That's just too much for a slate with literally 40 good value players at 4,000 or less.
It's gross.
I think
it's too much. They've adjusted the. I want to know why what is causing the trend of these consistently low-priced guys clear across both sites? They're opening this up for a reason.
I have heard arguments that I consider reasonable that it is based on trying to lure in basketball player or football players who don't have as much pertinent basketball knowledge. Ergo, they're just making it easy to play.
Andre Drummond out.
Okay, now Christian Wood. This is my point. Like, there's just an absolute. I'm missing some, but an insane value. You have Wood, Noel. I guess Dedmon doesn't quite qualify as insane. Teague, like there's really just a metric ton of places to go here.
I'm just sick of running a crunch and then immediately having something relevant happen.
Yeah, Wood. Also, like your power forwards on FanDuel can be 2 quite possibly starting centers because I think Is Wood still there? Let me check. Yeah, he's power forward there too.
Not entirely sure right now.
Yeah, he is. He's 5,100 power forward there. So now I have to figure out if I like Wood more or less than Bielitsa in the same game, by the way. And I kind of like playing them both and eschewing a somewhat popular Noel. We have seen Noel is not, perfectly 100%. It is a pretty big ankle injury. It's difficult for me. I can't say at this point that I would prefer, Bielitsa or Wood to him, simply because, especially with the FanDuel scoring, Nerlens Noel can get 20 points in steals and blocks. Well, he can't get 20 points in steals and blocks. He can get 18 or 21. But you understand my point. He picks up plenty of peripherals when he gets there, and you're saving over $1,000. But boy, some of these prices, kids.
So go around here. Good.
Are my visuals? Do
no,
I need
no,
to? Sorry, I'm
you.
flustered as all
I got
hell.
you. I got you. I can handle this. I can produce on the fly. We're good like that.
I don't think you can handle it.
I want to point out another piece of news. Michael Porter Jr. is now questionable with back injury, which is legitimate for him specifically. I liked him a lot today, and I guess not a lot relative to the guys that I do like a lot, but
I got to take a big L on Michael Porter Jr. because there were two issues with Michael Porter Jr. One was as a fantasy. Okay, there's one physical issue with him. There are two fantasy questions with him and reasons now might have got removed. Now, obviously, the biggest reason he's gotten tons of run and been productive is there's oodles of minutes and oodles of time available because you have at various points in time, obviously, no Millsap for a while, no Murray, no Harris. So, and he can play. We've seen easily the 3 and the 4. So they can play a smaller lineup, and he plays the 3 or he comes into the 4. So you're just going to get lots of Michael Porter Jr. But the two issues were, one, his previous play indicated that you would have a decisive lack of peripherals, wasn't going to pick up dimes, wasn't going to get tons of rebounds. Yeah, that hasn't happened. Dude be pulling down some rebounds.
Yeah,
monstrously, like way more than I expected. So I'm taking the L on that. I did not think he was ready to do that part in his game. Even in some tough matchups, he's looked really good at that. The other one I'll take half an L on was his defense, but his defense literally looks better after like 5 games. Like he's literally, and maybe this is me failing the eye test, but he looks much better the last 2 games than the 4 games preceding that. Like he's getting much, much better. So it was hard to get there. But you taking him out now, so you
again questionable, but I'm not confident in that, and I assume you feel the same way.
And at the price, and this has been 2 teams that spar a lot. When you talk about the Nuggets and the Rockets, they do a very good job defensively against each other.
Yeah.
In what is no longer a juicy tweet that's going to win 3 people $100,000 from last week, I prefer Westbrook again, and that's because he's been by any price metric superior for a week now. Basically, you're looking at 4 or 5 games in a row. I think 6 of the last 7 games you wanted Westbrook instead of Harden in DFS, something very close to that. And this is a Denver team that sits on Harden pretty hard, and I have to presume they're going to continue to do so.
Yeah.
It is not crazy to me to play a small amount of Torrey Craig now. Again, he doesn't have the upside to get on top of most of these guys, but I'm not shocked in a world where Torrey Craig outscores, I don't know, Landry Shamet. That can certainly happen. And I'm mentioning before, I talked more specifically about Teague. Shamet at 25%. Look, I understand wanting to get a lot of this game. It makes a little more sense, believe it or not, on DK, where he's 800 over the cap as opposed to the absolute floor on FanDuel, simply because on FanDuel, you have 2 massive Clippers you kind of have to get into every lineup and plenty of other spend up options. So it's a lot easier because of how cheap everyone is to get away from playing Landry Shamet. Because Landry Shamet on FanDuel, if he gets 30 fantasy points, which I haven't projected for well less than that, is probably not good enough. Like you're going to need some absolutely absurd numbers because of the other value. Like 3,500 is great and everything. So actually I like him a little more on DraftKings at 3,800. But that ownership is too high. I understand wanting to barnstorm this game, and by a lesser extent, we have a ton of ownership on this game, and then the Celtics for good reason in that matchup, which I'm a big fan of. And again, FanDuel especially, guys priced way the hell too low. But if your point guards on FanDuel are spend up options, or even just more underpriced options like Kemba, who is still in the 6s and now has no Jalen and is in a brilliant spot, and so I think I end up for those reasons getting away from Shamet more often than not. Both sites, and like he just isn't going. Like you're just looking at an upside guy. He had a big game as a 76er. 1 game, But literally, I'm guessing he has 1 or 2 career Clipper games over 30 fantasy points, and I don't think he's ever reached like 35. Like you literally need. This is very similar to someone else last week. I think it's V. Mikhailuk, where I'm like, look, you can roster him tonight. You need his career best game to pay off your price. We're not quite at that point, but speaking of which, Pistons, I'll get here. Wood, obviously priority. Markieff Morris, you should now pick up some reasonable exposure to. I don't think on a slate this juicy I can get into Thon McCurr or any of the rest of that. I would much rather.
Let's talk through this minutes breakdown here.
Okay,
they have 48 minutes to fill at center. I would imagine the majority of them come through Christian Wood and Thon McCurr. You can see Markieff Morris pick up a few, particularly against Sacramento in a situation where Nemanja Bjelica is the center. I just went 24-18-6 for those guys at center. I feel a little light on Christian Wood there.
I think 24 is a good median projection. I think there is a ceiling beyond that. Did we officially hit starting news? Not yet. No. Having seen Christian Wood will start at center, I think 24 is the right number. When you get will start at center, that probably kicks me to 26.
That's fair.
Is I think about how I would, and I'm top of my heading this and don't have time to actually research it thoroughly, but that is roughly where I would. That's roughly where I would. Not both of which in a pretty good spot. Both project brilliantly, so it's just an issue of how brilliantly. But yeah, at some point in 15 minutes ago, we got to put down 11 value guys and rank them. I think it's the best thing we can do to help people, because past that, you're just slotting through guys who are in good spots. I'm trying to look at guys who I have notes on that other people might differ on. Like a few people before today, and this will have obviously fallen off with all the best news coming up. We're interested in Shabazz Napier. I am a big fan of, if you can, and obviously we have some amazing value bigs, trying to get your way to some Karl Anthony Towns on that team. I have Karl Anthony Towns for a touch over 60 fantasy points tonight. I guess this is sort of my stand. I'm a massive fan of this spot. And if you...
especially if he's going to be getting minutes now.
Yeah, he played 35 in the last game. This is just about best possible spot for him. But it has, and I something I didn't think that I would spend my whole year doing is talking about how good the backcourt defense on the Bulls is, but it's that good. Like, they literally constantly give up good games to forwards and centers and give up crap games to point guards over and over and over again. I'm going to do a very quick bit of reverse history here.
Shout out Chris Dunn, by the way.
Shout out Chris Dunn. Yeah, Chris Dunn, Satoransky, and Zach LaVine going from, he's doing his own personal Klay Thompson, going from really, really bad. I don't know if you remember when Klay Thompson came into the league, like people trashed his defense, and he's now like very, very good at it. They just played the Bucks. Eric Bledsoe had 7, 3, and 2 in 28 minutes. Got the minutes and couldn't get there. Previous to that, they played the 76ers. Ben Simmons, 37 minutes, 20, 11, and 7. That's pretty good, but not dominating in a game without Embiid. Previous to that, they played the Wizards. Beal had 23, 4, and 4. Previous to that, they played the Celtics. Kemba Walker had 14, 4, and 2. Previous to that, they played the Pistons. I guess Derrick Rose would be your best answer. Had 22 and 7. That's, I guess, fine. Previous to that, they played the Pacers. TJ McConnell was the starting point guard. He had 4, 4, and 3. Previous to that, obviously doesn't matter for a whole hell of a lot, but just my point being, they really, really, really shut down. Previous to that, they played the Pelicans. He had 11, 7, and 5. Lonzo was the starting point guard. Like, they've given up one good starting point guard game in their last, 30 games because they suck down low. They're fairly good as guards. I mean, well above average as a backcourt. And you just dump the ball down to, I don't know, Karl Anthony Towns. So, I would play very little Shabazz Napier. I have to rank him because he still projects reasonably, but just eye test, I think that's a thing not enough people are forcibly getting the hell away from as fast as they can. So, I'd be critical of that exposure.
Okay.
Hard to get to Towns if you're prioritizing, obviously, just Wood, I believe you can play as a forward. DK, Noel, Dedmon, center only. Dedmon a little nerve-wracking, but now you're looking at starting at $3,100 against Christian Wood and a team that has no defense, just no defense. I don't think Reggie Jackson is unplayable. you don't need to play him at all now. Again, there are brilliant value plays, but he's going to play some at the 2. He's going to play some next to Derrick Rose. I have him at 19 minutes is how randomly my last iteration put him at. I'm at 19 fantasy points. Like, he's 3K. I'd have a non-zero amount of Reggie Jackson. I ranked him. I can just keep talking, but I don't know if you got a...
I've got a couple questions for you.
Dude.
So we have, let's just say, infinite value today. That seems like a pretty safe statement. I think it's actually completely accurate. You have as much value as you need. There is no point at which you are trying to get more studs in and you're like, crap, there's no value I like. There just isn't. There's not enough slots in your lineup where you're like, crap, I've got, you will run out of spaces, but there's not any bad value. You mentioned, this is just a throwaway. I do have an actual question for you. You mentioned like what you needed out of Shamit on FanDuel. Right now, sure. I have a minimum salary player needing 39 fantasy points on FanDuel to be like, okay, that worked out well. It's
that feels a little too high to me, but sure. It should be an incredibly significant number. Again, the expenditure is the slot more than anything else. You need 9 guys to go off. Go off.
You're betting on not getting it done.
Yeah, exactly. That's the point.
You need to then thread the needle on 8 other
guys. Points per dollar is one of the biggest fictions in DFS.
Agreed. It's very different at the low end than it is at the high end.
Right. It's just besides the standard plus a constant where it should be, 5x plus 10 or whatever the hell you're going to use as a thing as opposed to whatever. But it's also sometimes just raw ceiling. The more insane the value gets, it's even becomes less of an arithmetic and more of a geometric progression where I don't care what you cost. I need 50.
Yeah.
Like we have had 500-point slates and it's just like, can you get me 50? No, I can't play you. And we're close.
Yep.
So literally, if you're looking at a guy in your lineup and he can't get you 40 fantasy points and you're playing him in a GPP, it's like, like I have Deadman in my brain space at this moment, well lower than Wood and Noel and some of these other value plays because Deadman ain't going to give me 50. He might give me 31 for 3,100, and that feels good. And obviously, you should have some Dwayne Dedmon. I'm not saying don't play Dwayne Dedmon, but I'm saying, it's like there's a point in which you just need infinite points. This could be that slate. It happens a couple times a year where people get close to 500. That's how we do, fam.
So, in lieu of that discussion of how infinite our value is today, what do you do with James Harden, LeBron James? I think we can scratch Anthony Davis. I think he's limited to 30 minutes, pretty high. But even include him, Anthony Davis. You've mentioned Jokic at this point. Drummond's already gone. Trae Young's gone. You've mentioned Towns. What do we pay up for?
I mean, we'll start on DraftKings because it's one of many options. I am back to being lower on Ben Simmons than most people. When Embiid went out and they said Embiid's can be out for a while, there were a lot of people being like, yeah, I like Harris and I like Horford, but I'm not sure about Ben Simmons. He doesn't get a boost. I'm like, he gets a boost. He's had a boost. He hasn't had it this year because of a couple other externalities that happened to even those numbers. But if you go back last year, he got a huge boost and he gets a boost. He will get a boost because it just made common sense when you don't have the option of dropping it down to the best post player in the universe. You're going to drive a little more yourself. Like it was sort of a common sense issue. Simmons, someone I want to pay up for if you're looking for positives, very nearly got a triple-double in each of the previous games this year in this matchup, which is a pretty poor matchup for him, but just oodles of turnovers. Not sure there's enough ceiling here. So this sounds weird for me, but I'd be like prioritizing Karl Anthony Towns simply because I think recency, bad memory, people are going to spend up for James Harden and LeBron James. And I like Harden and LeBron James. Like they're, I got them both projected for, 61 and 56 fantasy points. Like they're just fine when you're trying to get raw points, but I think they're higher owned than Karl Anthony Towns. So I projected sort of right in between the two of them. So yeah, I do think this is a tough spot, and no shots taken at anyone here. This is a really tough spot for anyone trying to do ownership because of all the correlated ownership. When you open up amazing plays at $4,000, and I mean, just in a points per dollar, you have Christian Wood, Nerlens Noel, Jeff Teague, all basically $4,000, depending what site you're looking at, all projecting for north of 30 fantasy points. That's incredibly, that is going to naturally goose the ownership on expensive guys. So that is really hard to keep up with. So I would suspect whatever we have the numbers projected on those guys at, and I suspect they're all quite low, they will all be higher. Like I am guessing right now, if you told me our ownership, we're going to have something like LeBron, 8% Harden, 5% Towns. I
Harden
doubt anyone
9, LeBron 8, Towns 6, Westbrook 9.
Was
Simmons,
that seriously
11.
it?
Yeah.
I did not know that, and I said 9-8-5, and they were 9-8-6. Sorry, I'm just patting
Westbrook
myself on
9,
the back.
Simmons 11, Jokic 8. It's everywhere else. It doesn't really start getting into real double digits until you get to Jason Tatum.
Yeah, okay. Sounds good. And to a degree, that makes sense at the start of the day. But at this point, when the value is so sick, even if you have Tatum projected for, 44 fantasy points and Ben Simmons projected for 46 fantasy points, that extra $1,500 doesn't really exist anymore. It's there, but I'm giving myself 40 in all my value slots. That's going to happen in some lineup that wins this tournament. It's going to have 3 guys, at least, maybe 4, that cost $3,100 to $4,400, and they're all going to score 40. I guarantee you.
Yeah.
So I need those other spots to get as high as possible. So it really is going to slap it around a little bit with as far as the math goes. So prioritizing our expensive guys. Let's have that conversation. So looking at DraftKings, I don't know if I'm going to do raw points or points per. And those ownerships are all the same, but they're going to adjust. And I'm just trying to guess how many people are going to wiggle where. What do we have Westbrook at currently?
Call it single digits. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
9.
He's slightly higher than Harden. Okay,
9. It's a little bit lower than the amount of likes that we have on this video. We have 3,300 people and only 342 likes. Let's bump that up a little bit, guys. Hit the thumbs up. This is a massive slate. Use your love with the click of a button and the click on a thumb. Go for it.
No, I love it. So presuming they're all roughly evenly owned, I like Towns is the guy who, if they're all even, that I suppose I'm somehow prioritizing, which feels weird. But if I'm starting to increase my exposure to Harden, James, Brow, Westbrook, Towns, Simmons, Jokic, Levine, I guess is sort of where we'll draw the line. That's the 9K plus crowd.
Yeah.
I think Towns is the one I'm most trying to move against the field. It is not hard for me at all envisioning how I expect the game to go, just playing it out in my head, him getting to 65, 70 fantasy points. I have issues with everyone else to a certain degree. Lakers just played the Knicks and beat the bejesus out of them, so nobody got there on either team. That just happened.
Yeah.
So it's not hard for me to imagine how LeBron fails. Or Anthony Davis has a bigger game, or we're going to see ways he fails. I can obviously see ways he gets a 75-point triple-double. I'm not saying don't play LeBron James. By all means, play LeBron James. But I can see how he fails. James Harden is a focus of the Denver defense. Now, they're home. I like that. They're minus Jamal Murray, and I think we're still on questionable Gary Harris. Can you confirm that for me?
Still questionable to my knowledge. I have not seen.
Okay, sorry. Else. So questionable Gary Harris. If he's out, that helps him a little bit. That's a really relevant cookie for me, because those two guys box him up pretty well. But it's still James Harden. You can have 80 any night. So I'm not saying don't play James Harden, but I can see way he fails. I just see more ways I get the game I'm looking for out of Towns than these other guys. I don't know how to put it any better than that. I just think the other guys are in matchups where I think they could struggle, and I have no reason to believe he struggles in any way. I imagine he's, missed playing some basketball and is going to go out there and put his thing down. So, pretty big fan. All
righty. Another opportunity, guys. Go check out Superdraft. Go to superdraft.io. Use the promo code AWESOMO. Get yourself $20 in super cash on your first $100 deposit. Their $20,000 jump shot, 4K to first contest, still looking like it's going to have some overlay. 19 minutes and 50 seconds until lock. They've got 1,368 entries of the 1933 that they can take in. So it's getting close to full. It's starting to fill up actually a lot quicker right now. Probably because I'm talking about it, but I think that you guys should absolutely go check it out. You can get in there with the $20 bonus that you get. Check it out, guys. Superdraft.io, promo code AWESOMO. And Justin Swearingen, super chat coming in right now. Favorite low-owned play for a FanDuel GPP? That I can help out with.
Low owned.
I mean, if Nerlens Noel and Christian Wood really do have low ownership, which I don't expect them to, those would be my answers. But I really like Will Barton, and I don't think his ownership is going to go.
I'm there. I'm there. He's
It's not low, but it's lower than I'm going to have.
It's in my Jokic consideration. 6,500 Barton. This has historically been a better matchup for him. They've done a fairly good job against Jokic. Other guys are out. We talked about this the other day. He was flirting with a triple double. You're going to get some monster games as long as you're Son Murray. He ends up being your de facto ball holder, ball handler, if you will, pretty frequently. So
yeah,
I think I would have actually said Will Barton. So that's a little scary on a slate of this size. I hadn't landed on the name yet, but I was definitely looking in that general direction. So
smart men think alike.
Bravo to you, sir.
Yeah,
I like. I have to say that I like Lou Williams much more than Montrezl Harrell on both sides.
Yes, I agree.
And I've said this about 6 times over the last 2 weeks, and I think it's been right every time for a number of reasons. You've had some very decent Harrell games because he's just perennially underpriced. That's just what it comes down to. Dude has been too cheap in several formats for quite a while. But the minutes are threatened, and even more so by the blowout. And we saw this against Atlanta this year. But they are balancing center a little bit more. The most relevant factor for Zubac staying in tends to be Zubac is going off. Spoiler, this is a pretty good situation for Zubac to go off in the first quarter.
Absolutely is.
So if they start Zubac and they don't start Harrell next to him, which I would be incredibly surprised, we almost never see that, then you've got Lou and Zubac and some guys out there who don't do a terribly good job at offensively converting the basketball. So yeah, when Zubac has 10 points and 7 rebounds in 7 minutes, it's a little harder to take him out, and you get a little more even split. And Lou is just going to be running and gunning and running the offense and picking up. I have him at like 7 rebounds. They go way up in this situation, and triple-double Lou Williams is more likely tonight than probably any night the rest of his career. It feels that like I love Montrezl Harrell. He ranks out, especially FanDuel 5,900. Knock me over with a feather. Love me some Montrezl Harrell, but I love Lou Williams. Like if I had his address, I would go, put a sack over his head and marry him. I'm a big fan.
Exciting. Shout out to Overdrive Automotive Center for the super chat.
I love the name. I love the fact that he actually gets like a plug, like he gets a real cookie.
Legit I love the plug for that super chat as well. Best small forward in DK Cash and thoughts on Butler. So I would say that given where the ownership is right
James.
now, I was going to say Gordon Hayward for 5,800. Fourth most owned small forward, power forward. Other option would be Landry Shamet. I would rather go to Gordon Hayward in that spot. So there's not a ton of awesome...
I think LeBron James is just fine. Yeah. Like I like Gordon Hayward, and there's a real chance you get 40 out of him and 57 out of LeBron and points per dollar. That works out better, but it's the Knicks, and if they wreck their ass, LeBron is still going to do some reasonable point of that. And you're saying cash, and there is infinite value, of which I presume you would play a lot of in cash. Again, they beat the Knicks, I think, by 30 on the nose, and LeBron ended up with only 52 in that game because he played 30 minutes or whatever. But I would add LeBron to the list of guys I'd be perfectly interested in. If you are like, wow, I love all this value, I have that much left over, I wouldn't have a problem if I saw LeBron there. But I agree with your takes on Hayward, etc. there.
As for Jimmy Butler,
I like the spot for Jimmy Butler. He is average. For it. Yeah, it's 8,500, but he's averaged, I want to say, about 55 fantasy points in the 2 games against the Wizards he's played thus far this year. It is a particularly nice spot for him. I don't know if we have Duncan news. Don't really care. I haven't projected for like 49.
We do have Marcus Morris news. By the way, I'm almost positive I saw Duncan Robinson was in earlier today, but Marcus Morris is also available to play.
Okay, so boy, do I not like any of the Knicks.
I like Marcus Morris.
Force me to play a Knick. I'm going to sit here and look at Morris, Mitchell Robinson, and Elfrid Payton for a while and pick one and not feel good about any of them.
Yeah. Duncan Robinson is available to play, by the way.
Okay, there we go. So, minor cookie away there. Don't play any James Johnson now. Reduce any significant, Derek Jones Jr. exposure you had because that hurts his minutes a bit. But basically the Heat should be, with all the value around it, it should be Butler and Adebayo. And I legitimately like Butler and Adebayo quite a bit. I think they are going undersold. I am guessing we have them at 4 or 5% ownership. Getting 50 out of Adebayo or 60 out of Butler would not be strange occurrences for me. Those numbers may not be good enough, but I'm a big fan of those erstwhile gentlemen this evening.
Is there anybody obvious to you right now that we have not touched on that you want to make sure we touch on with 15 minutes to go? I'm
rolling down ownership at this point and just looking for a name to jump out at me.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we don't miss anything that stands out to you right now, because this slate is crazy.
The ownership on Lowry is about where it should be. 6,600 is just too low. It is not a particularly great matchup, but competitive games, the minutes get super ridiculous. I think he missed one of the games previously this year against Toronto, and the other one he had 45 or 50 or something with Siakam there, with whatever. Like, Lowry has an upside to get the hell on top of 66. So we mentioned that number is about appropriate. I'm just looking for anyone that I love who has an ownership down here in the singles. I gave Towns one more shouts than he deserves. What do you think about Lonzo? I want to throw Lonzo, or not Lonzo. I want to throw Zion at you. Sorry, Z names on the Pelicans. That'll happen.
I have no interest in Zion. I assume he gets owned more because of his name and playing today than he probably should. Would I be surprised if he played 28 minutes today? A little bit, but at the same time, like, who the hell knows?
Yeah. I mean, we have him projected at 1%. 1. Now, he's 5K on DK.
I don't think we have a mechanism that we flag anybody that says, like, this is the most hyped rookie since LeBron James in it.
Right, yeah, that would not be in our algorithm. That's a fair point. Yeah, we probably don't have something to...
If his name was Schmyon Schmilliamson, he probably would be 1% owned, but... So I expect him to get ownership just because of who he is, in addition to whatever it should have been. I just don't need... There is so much good out there now. I don't need to guess on him. Because even if he gives you what? Let's say Zion drops a 38 fantasy point game today. It's probably meaningless. He's 5K, right?
It's 45 on FanDuel, which makes it a little more interesting. But I think that's the right take. I just sort of wanted to hear yours.
To win today, I really do think you're probably going to need like 40 plus across the board. And if that's the case, he's just not going to have a minute ceiling high enough for that to happen. If he wants to go out there and drop 2+ fantasy points per minute in 20 minutes, I'd love to watch it. But I can't roster him.
I think I cleared into a lot of the guys I'm interested in. FanDuel 6,100 Ricky Rubio feels really good to me. I think this is actually a spot where he could have ceiling. I would make sure to have some real exposure there. But we talked about Barton, which I wanted to. We talked about Towns, which I wanted to. We talked about Lou and Trez reasonably significantly. All the value broke was important. So I'm ready to hand it to questions unless we have something else. And if I see something in these notes here that
Michael Porter Jr. closer to doubtful. I pulled him immediately on the So does that opening up anything else to you for the Nuggets? I guess having Gary Harris still floating in the breeze matters in a way.
Right. So I mean this really, if you get Gary Harris out also, you're going to get 31 minutes of Malik Beasley, which DK has priced him too high, but with all the other value going on, he's 42 on FanDuel.
Sorry to cut you off. Thon McCurr starting for the Pistons. Rose, Mikhailiuk, Snell, Morris, McCurr. Sons of bitches.
I can't go with. I mean, it's gonna make your FanDuel like $5,100 Christian Wood fall behind your other power forward options there. So that's something to keep in mind. Power forward there is kind of juicy. You have, again, I mentioned Bielitsa at 54, Draymond at 56. There's Michael Porter was only 53 there. That should have remained in consideration. Thad Young at 45. Again, the way they deployed him a lot of the rest of the time, we actually got to see more Laurie, more down. You got to see more Thad, who played 28 minutes last game, especially FanDuel scoring against the Timberwolves. You get, 30 minutes of Thad. That's going to compare pretty well. It's hard to get there over, say, JaMychal Green at 4,400. That's a particularly brilliant spot, but and again, Noel, I still think being front of the class in this consideration we're having here. But does that do anything for me? I'm not playing Tony Snell. I'm not spending 5K on Zvi Mikhailiuk. If he's still like 10 on Yahoo, you can do that. Otherwise, that's just wrong on this slate.
Yeah.
I probably Markieff, where he's like 42, 43. You have like really like 30-minute upside down in a pretty good matchup. Feels weird playing Markieff and land of amazing bigs tonight, but I try to make sure I had some. But yeah, not a team I think we need to be super targeting. Rose is fine. It is difficult for me with the game he plays and the lack of peripherals to go crazy, but you may get 30 shots out of Derrick Rose in 30 minutes tonight. So I can get there. But with the news we may miss Porter to Malik Beasley has a real chance. His minutes have been all in the great hell over the place. I remember thinking he was going to get, removed entirely from the rotation and not play. And he didn't play one game literally where he was active. And then he played like 6 minutes and then he played 40. Then he played 13 and then him. I expect him to. He's their easiest movable piece. Like they don't have a ton of neat. Well, you and I are going to do our trade deadline show soon, so I don't want to spoil it. But I think at this point you should have a Malik Beasley plan. Now on DraftKings, he's like 4,700. That's not particularly brilliant, but
Deadman starting.
Yeah, that I basically was pretty sure on. I thought I heard that reported, though maybe that came to me in a message because that's one of the teams I actually know people work on. But I thought everyone knew that. Sorry.
Oh no, I hadn't seen it until right now. I mean,
I
would have been shocked if he wasn't starting.
Yeah, that might have just broken. I might have known from. I have so many notes I didn't.
2 minutes ago.
Different. Oh, okay, that's really weird. I knew that 2.5 hours ago. So I'll just move on from that.
Wait, who do you think I said?
Deadman.
Yeah,
Dwayne.
I thought we were hypothesizing that at the beginning of the show. Maybe I was.
No, I was positive he was starting. I have my notes as starting, so I wrote it in from. I'll check my email later and see if I can figure out where they came from. Doesn't matter. I
don't know who I'm thinking of.
Kings. Yeah, I mean that's the Kings are the only one where I see a lot of.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking.
Don't worry about it.
Trying to think of a way to bucket. Who could like all of the value plays to rank. You mentioned that before.
Yeah.
I mean, let's talk like Teague, Wood, Shamet, Deadman, Noel. I don't think I'm missing
I'm gonna write this down at the bottom of my notes page here. Let's go. Teague, Wood, Shamet, Noel,
Deadman.
Deadman, 37 on FanDuel, 31 on DK for him.
Yeah. That's I mean, how far depends how far down you want to go. Like Monty Morris is 4K on FanDuel, 4,800 on DraftKings. If we're considering that too high, that's probably it.
I mean, JaMychal Green is probably just a tier worse because of minutes uncertainty for me. But I think people are higher on him than me. I can give you my take on JaMychal Green real quick.
Go for it.
The minutes could be all the hell over the place. Like there's a real chance you get 31 minutes out of him. There's a real chance you get 19 minutes out of him. Regardless of all these other guys out there, still Harkless, there's still Magruder. They have lots of guys who play a million different positions. There's the blowout run guys. I have him at, I think, 26 minutes. I like him fine. He ranks fine, but like he falls way past even with me being worried about the minutes, Nerlens Noel and a number of other guys. So I think I'm lower on JaMychal Green than other people have. I don't know what we haven't projected at ownership for.
I assume next to nothing.
Oh, then I would like him a bit more. I think previously I had thought he was somewhat
6.
6%.
That's
Javonte Green. 6%. Okay, so that's not next to nothing, but it's not a hell of a lot. So yeah, I agree that that's pretty much our essential list.
Okay.
Would be Teague, Deadman, Zubac. I think should be on that list as well.
That's fair.
All right.
Rank these gentlemen for the public with 5 minutes to go before we get to lock. Again, one last call for thumbs up on this video. Please hit the like button. 3,000 people here, 600 likes. Can we get it to 1,000? Are you guys crazy enough to do that? Let's find
Teague,
out.
Wood, Shamet, Noel, Deadman, Green, Zubac. As far as points per dollar for me, that probably ends up being Teague, I think, is my top. I'm curious where you go here because you're actually you can like yank this out of a computer.
Teague would be my one here.
Teague is your one here, I presume.
Yes.
We'll use DK prices. Teague is, I think, your best points per dollar. I think Deadman is probably your second best points per dollar.
I agree.
Okay. I think third is going to be Noel. We're on DK.
I'm hopping back to it.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay.
Actually,
and
Christian Wood is 4K.
Is he 4K on DK?
Yeah.
That's very low. Yeah, he's 5-1 on FanDuel. So, yeah, Christian Wood, probably you still have to project. For now, I would drop back to like 22 minutes. Basically, I would have said 24 with no knowledge. Starting, I would have said 26. Not starting, I'll say 22 now. Feels about right. It's a good
That's
matchup
who
with
we
Secker.
were talking about. Christian Wood,
Christian.
Not
It was
Deadman.
Christian Wood, not Deadman, right?
Yeah. The moment you said 24, 26, 22, I was like, that's the discussion.
That was the conversation we had. So yeah, these other guys all end up very close. You probably end up with the bottom just because of minutes uncertainty. You're going to have Green and Zubac at the bottom. But again, you and I basically agreed that it's Teague, Dedmon, Noel or Wood is going to end up pretty close. Shamet probably ends up behind them, though again, your ceiling is limited. And then Green and Zubac would be that 1A tier for me. So that's points per dollar. After that, you're adjusting per site, adjusting per ownership. Again, you and I have Teague as the 1, but again, we currently have Teague as 61% owned in our newest projection. Wood at 47, that's going to come down a bit with him not starting, but we have Teague and Wood with collectively 108% ownership.
Whew.
That's a lot of Wood.
That's a lot of Wood.
Just like I can't do it. It's too easy. Not going to make the joke.
There's a too easy joke to be made there as well.
You've met my wife. So I'm back into the news digging here.
I am uploading my final bit of lineups as well.
Yeah. So like if someone's like, so if you were building tonight, what would you do? I have a feeling I would take great value and Celtics and guys in that one game. And then I would put Townsend because apparently that's where I've chosen to make a stand and stake my rep for the evening. And figure that's enough differentiation. So I would build my first few laps with various iterations on that. There are so many well-priced and productive players, assuming you have access to a reasonable set of projections. You should not need much help beyond that description.
Austin Rivers will play today. I've been waited with bated breath for that news. Or not.
Now I can breathe again. 2 minutes and some change.
Let's see. Questions. What do you think about Herter and Teague together? If you think that game can stay close, I don't mind it.
Yeah, exactly. You need to have, or I would want to have Lou Williams almost essentially, because you're now saying that game has to stay close. So I'd want to have some significant Clippers presence. It wouldn't be a disqualifying matchup for me. I generally am opposed to game stacking in 12 game slates. I don't think long-term it is a good policy, but 2 players from one team is not an immediate disqualification for me.
Right.
So especially where you have $5,300 Herter and, or where you have $4,000 Teague, like you're collectively on either site spending about $10,000 on those 2 dudes. Yes, I think there's a chance they collectively get you 80 and that ends up working out. Not something I would prioritize, but I think it's fine.
And I'll assume that you just have one of the Clippers guys in that lineup as well, since that's
right.
Pretty
it's pretty hard to build a lineup without some Clippers guys tonight. So
yeah. 6:58. We are up against it right now. 1 minute to go. You have a final take for the final minute. Anything that you need to get out. How many games do we have at 7?
I believe we have 3: Detroit, Orlando, and the game we're all waiting on, by the way, is so we can stay a little late. That is, I think the Atlanta game is 7:30 or 8. There's a couple 7:30 games too. It's 7:30.
I have 5 games at 7:30, but my schedule's always wrong.
Yeah, we have it's a few at 7 and then many more at 7:30. So we're gonna have an interesting daddy light recitative real quick.
By the way, we almost got that super draft contest filled.
Did we?
3 games at 7. Philly, Toronto also at 7. But yeah, it got to 1881 with 20 seconds to go. So 1933 was the total. They're going to come just shy of filling. Good work, everybody.
Bravo, gentlemen. Bravo.
Yeah, but yeah, it's I think luck, everybody.
That was quite a thing. Nothing I find is going to be terribly useful now anyway.
We are locked in 3 seconds.
I'm gonna go. Let me search my email.
What a day, guys!
I want to see if. Yes, I got an email from someone saying Dedmon will start today.
Yeah,
3 hours ago. So, okay.
I had too much wood on the brain.
Oh my god! Oh,
I'm pulling up DraftKings ownership now.
So I checked my Twitter just before we went on air. How many notifications do I have?
After that?
After I did not touch it until just now. I literally could not look at it for an hour. I couldn't do half the things I wanted to do at an appropriate schedule. So.
69.
115.
Ooh.
So if you sent me a tweet or asked a question, I will get back to you, but it's going to take a minute. I apologize. I'm happy to answer any question in the world. The hour or two leading up to lock are very unlikely. Like someone sent me an hour ago I got two really interesting personal things in the last hour. One, someone sent me a personal correspondence apologizing for being a little rude to me last night about Boban Marjanovic. And last night was interesting for me because it was one of the only times I had literally 5 people yell at me about something I did perfectly. Like I literally made it the absolute perfect take and described it absolutely perfectly and said the best thing you could and got a metric ton of shit over Boban. Literally, I said, I wanted to take him out of my player pool because I think the outstanding likelihood is that he does not play. If you look at the last 10 games where Kristaps was out, he frequently got in. You got up to 20 minutes. He played like 6 of those 10 games. The 10 games before that, when Kristaps was healthy, he played no more than 4 minutes in any game, and it was all blowout runs. So I think the biggest likelihood is that he does not play, and I want to make that clear. But he is a dude who, if something goes a little weird or there's a blowout, can get you 40 fantasy points in 20 minutes. So I've still included him in my player pool by ranking him. That was my Boban take, and something went weird. He went out and went apeshit crazy in his limited 16 minutes or whatever, and he was not going to, like, with Dwight Powell ripping his leg apart, he played like 7 minutes in the second half. Guy was not going to play at all. And yeah, I had multiple people go, I took Boban out after I listened to you. I'm like, all right, well,
Gary Harris out.
Okay. Let's talk
Michael
about
Porter
that
Jr. out as well. I've got ownership pulled up for the big $20 on DK. This is going to be fun.
Oh my God. Let's talk Nuggets for a second first. Okay. I think it would be, and then I would happily, I'll do ownership game anytime. But and someone else sent me another thing where they were like, I wanted to thank you for someone who had just won some money, and they both came in at like 6:30, and so I'm like, dude, I would like to respond to that. This is not a great time, so you may have to send it again.
I don't really have new Nuggets thoughts. This kind of just went like I've expected it to once I pulled Michael Porter Jr. I don't have a ton of interest in anybody not named Jokic, Barton.
I mean, I like Barton. I like Barton even more.
This just confirms what I liked before. But
yeah, that's
was the same sort. Like nothing's changed to me.
Beasley is interesting to me at this point. I can think of ways in which you get 31 minutes and 42 fantasy points out of Malik Beasley now. Like,
did
it's
you see
really
the quote about
weird.
Jared Vanderbilt today?
No, but he's the next guy I was going to mention. He'll get some of that 4 time.
Malone mentioned specifically that he was going to be like a major part of the rotation today, which makes me think that he said that knowing that Michael Porter Jr. was not playing.
Presumably. Yeah, that's the only way he says that. Yeah. So yeah, he may start.
I gave him 20 minutes.
I mean,
but I don't need Jared Vanderbilt for.
They will start. This is going to be a weird starting lineup. You got Jokic. Okay, that feels pretty good. Grant. Okay, that feels pretty good.
Barton.
Morris, Craig, Barton. I think is what you're going to get.
Yeah.
We'll start Torrey Craig. The big thing is Torrey Craig is going to play 38 minutes. Vanderbilt will play like, I think I could redo the rotation like 2021. I think you're going to get literally into the mid to high 30s out of Torrey Craig here. Like when everyone's healthy, they roll him out there for 22 minutes just to sit on James Harden.
Yeah, you might. And they got a lot of like dudes. Really bad DFS players. Hernan Gomez, Craig.
Yeah.
Vanderbilt hasn't been great in the minutes that he's gotten.
All right, so I guess if you have it, is the ownership ready? We can play that game for a minute and look for more news. Okay.
By the way, Clippers starting Mann, Williams, Shamet, Harkless, Zubac.
That's funny because earlier today I said I thought that might happen. Mann, Williams, it's a small, shitty Iowa. Trae Young is going to regret not being out there because
I gave Mann 14 minutes. I feel pretty good about that.
I gave him 20 and didn't give. I ranked him.
I thought they might go start. Maybe.
Okay, so let's. I was pretty sure at this point it would be Mann over Walton. They zigged and then zagged and then went back to Mann being based on like I read all their pressers and everything Doc says and looking at it. That's actually where I thought that would go. It's funny because I was looking at the old game, the game they played. I think it was late November. And Mann started and played the most minutes in that game. Again, Terrence Mann started against the Hawks with, boy, I got like Terrence Mann now. This is really upsetting for me. Now, I want to say a couple things. He is minimum price. That's nice. And that rhymed. But he's not a good fantasy player. There was a Terrence Mann day this year where he was chalk and I crapped all over him. And I went, look, I think he plays 30 minutes and I think he has like 18 fantasy points. And he went out and he had 13 and a half fantasy points in 5 minutes and played 30 minutes and ended with 16. So he can disappear. My addition to that statement would be, that's really hard to do when all the guys with usage on your team are sitting. Like, you are going to get Jerome or Mann doing something here. It's really weird they're going super small. But in that game where you had no Leonard, no Shamet, no Beverly earlier this year against the Hawks, he played 33 minutes and had 30 fantasy points, and he's the minimum price. So that's not insane. I would make getting some man in my lineup somewhat. I make getting some man in my night somewhat of a priority.
There you go.
What are you thinking about? Like, I really think it's a conversation at this point.
Oh, I mean, I have 2 guys from the Clippers and 2 guys only from the Clippers, at least on FanDuel, and that's Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell. I don't have a share of another player. On DraftKings, it would be a little bit different. I would probably have a little bit of Landry Shamet. I would have a little bit of Zubac. I don't get the sense that I would have anyone else.
I would play some Terrence Mann at this point. I don't know how much, but
what do you need out of him at this point? 35 fantasy points?
30. I literally think he may have scored 35 fantasy points in that game against the Hawks. I will look, but that's kind of, I'm just saying I would have some, also because you're getting immediate leverage to name guy. So I'm not saying get an amazing percentage, but you're going to look at some of this chalk being 20, 30, 40% owned. There's lots of lesser. I'm saying instead of having 50% Teague and 40% Wood and 30% Shamet, I would try to have, 25, 20, 15 on those guys and lots of other 5 and 10s, and Terrence Mann would be one of my 5s and 10s. That's what I'm trying to say.
That's fair.
I'll put it that way. Somehow
Dort starting in Oklahoma City, so it's Paul, SGA, Dort, Gallo, Noel.
I know, it's just fun when you say Dort.
You ready for ownership?
Lugens Dort. Go ahead. I'm looking up the random old box score of that game, but
we have 6 guys north of 10% in the first 3 games, of which only one of them is north of 17.
All right, what are my 3 games? All right, hold on. I'm looking at this box score and then I want to sit back because I don't like to be looking at my computer when we do this. Terrence Mann played 33 minutes, shot 6 for 8 from the field, had 13 points, 2 turnovers, that's 12, 8 assists, that's 12, is 24, 6 rebounds, that's 7.5, that's 31.5, did not make a field goal. He had 31.5 when these 2 teams played. He's the minimum price. That seems worth pointing out. So I would have some in there. He did not make a 3. He did not record a steal or a block. So, I think it is possible he gets to that 35. So I would endorse having 5 or 10% of Terrence Mann and Sermon. You said there are how many players north of 10?
6 guys, 10 or higher. Only one is north of 17.
That's going to be Christian Wood. There's no way people bailed on that fast enough. So Christian Wood is north of 17.
Christian Wood is north of 17, the highest owned player of the first 3 games. Do you know how high owned Christian Wood is?
I think it was probably been 45 ish. The news is going to drop that. I'll say 10, so I'll say 35.
Should have stuck with your first guess, 45.
Wow, he held that not starting. Yeah, so that's too, again, I know I say this 16 times a week, but it's really important. That's wrong.
Yeah.
It's not like a horrific issue if it happens. The guy's obviously there because he projects really nicely, but if you're trying to win a GPP with 280,000 people in it, being able to do that alone is really valuable. And there's a lot of guys who project slightly worse than him and are going to be 6% owned. So it just does not make sense to follow that ownership almost any time. And again, it's relative to both. It's just the number of other guys. If Christian Wood is predominantly the best, if there is no Dwayne Dedmon and no Nerlens Noel and no Jeff Teague and no other guys, then sure, jumping on that train makes a lot of sense. But 45% then is a little more tolerable. There's so much good value tonight. No one should be 45% on, unless it's like they have 6 active players. Wood will start. We expect him to play 40 minutes. Okay, fine. Then that makes sense. But That's too high. Just again, and the 30 behind it. Do you agree with me, by the way? Like I spout that a lot, and I don't know if you agree, because you get very quiet, and I worry it's because you disagree with me, but you don't want to make me look bad. Please make me look bad.
No, the Christian Wood one's a little weird for today. Like if it comes out that he's starting, I don't think the 45% is outlandish in any way today.
I agree. I'll give you that. That becomes a very good matchup, and the minutes are a little more guaranteed. Now
there are enough pivots that like I can understand getting away. There are so many people that you can get to in that same salary range that you can easily make that difference. Normally on a slate like this, if this happens, there aren't 5 other guys 4K or below that are all like relatively comparable.
Like I know from the other things you said, Nerlens Noel is 17 or under. That's not close. That's not close. If he's exactly 17, if he's the 17% guy,
he's not.
Right. Then I still prefer 17% Nerlens Noel massively to 45% not starting Christian Wood, who I think we can say sort of a theme for the year of that team has been really dicking around with that guy's minutes and production. So, so anyway, just like I want to discuss the theory because it makes a lot of sense. We go, this guy's in and raw, everyone jumps on the train. But if we've seen any trend this year, it's that guys from on 7 o'clock lock slates, guys from 6:30 to 7 news get just piled on, and guys from before the 8 o'clock games don't get moved on enough.
He's unlikely to kill you just because he's 4K now. Like that's he'll fill that up enough, but it's not going to prevent you. He's not going to be the guy that prevents you from cashing today. That much I can tell you.
No, I'm never gonna, like all these guys who are popular are always good plays. So it's rarely a situation where like, this is a horrible thing, you've screwed yourself. They can obviously get there. It is very rare that there's like, if we had ended up with 38% Landry Shamet, I would have said, okay, that can really screw your night. Because Landry Shamet, he's not going to be handling the ball a ton now too, by the way. They're putting out another guard. So like,
he could put up 8 in 32 minutes. Christian Wood can't play 32 minutes and put up 8.
Yeah, it's actually impossible. Exactly. He would have to foul trouble or something. But like, Shamet, if Shamet ended up, 40% owned or something, that'd be a real problem. Yeah. And starting man is legitimately bad for him. That's another guard out there. Then Jerome is going to run that second unit. So this could actually turn into a pretty scary Shamet game. I bear some concern here. But anyhow.
5 guys to go.
All right. I got Philly, Toronto, Detroit, Sacramento, and what's the other game?
Orlando and Oklahoma City.
King. Is it? Oh, right. Wait, no, it's
Orlando, Oklahoma City.
It's Kings and Detroit.
Yes.
Okay, I got it now. And Philly and Toronto. Okay, correct. Got it. Okay, so we've got Wood done from that game. Derrick Rose, certainly with Drummond out, will get 10%.
Derrick Rose, number 3, 15% owned.
Okay. Dwayne Dedman starting at 3,100 will get 10%.
Dwayne Dedman, 17% owned, number 2. That's what that number right there is what makes Christian Wood at 45 be weird.
Yeah. Well, all right. I'll say Nerlens Noel, but the way you said he's not has me worried that he didn't get 10%, which is absurd. But
Nerlens Noel, 4th, 11%.
That's I mean, that's great.
Center only. So
okay. I don't know. Very relevant. Very relevant.
Matters. I guess.
Matters. I mean, we've listed 4 players so far, 3 of which are centers.
Christian Wood forward eligible. Both forwards? Is that real? That can't be. He can't be small forward, power forward.
Where?
DraftKings.
Christian Wood is power forward center. I'm almost certain.
Christian Wood is power forward center. It just has roster position F.
Oh, okay.
But Derrick Rose is shown as roster position shooting guard. Markieff Morris is shown as roster position power forward.
Oh, I have no idea. You mean like if you download it?
I grabbed it from the CSV. Yeah.
All right. Like I know you have other utilities and stuff, so I don't know if you have like a running scrape or something.
No. I downloaded the CSV.
All right, we're at 7:15.
Anyway, so we have.
I want to get done with this.
2 to go.
How many people are watching the stream? I'm just curious how responsible I feel for 7:30.
1,500.
Yeah, okay, I guess I feel responsible. Okay, I'm gonna say Kyle Lowry is my only representative of that game. 66.
Kyle Lowry, 10% owned. You are missing one guy. Lowry was last on the list.
I had him well behind Lowry. I'll say Pascal Siakam.
Pascal Siakam, 8% owned. 2 off the pace.
Ben Simmons.
Ben Simmons, 8% owned. He is 1 rank spot off the pace. You won't be surprised by this.
I should know it then. It's no one on Orlando. It's no one on OKC. There's no way the math works out for any of those guys. It can't be any. It's not. All right, I'm going to try to eliminate games. Help me out here. It's no one on Orlando or OKC.
Correct.
Tobias Harris.
No.
I got a chuckle out of that one.
16th.
I'm going to yield. If we got 12 minutes, I will. I don't like to do this, but I want to research and go back to my computer. So I'm gonna punt.
That's fair. Markieff Morris.
I'm gonna punt. I don't. Oh God, I haven't talked about him.
Like I told you, it wasn't that surprising.
No, that makes. I'm surprised it was that high. I thought due to the minutes uncertainty and just being Markieff Morris and Nerlens, who I thought would be higher end, would I mentally had checked out as him being in that 5% range I was discussing.
Yeah,
but no, he was not.
Alrighty. Well, guys, thank you for joining us. Please hit the like button on your way out the door. There's still 1,500 of you. That feels like 1,500 thumbs up as far as I'm concerned. Thank you to SuperDraft for being the presenting sponsor. Go to superdraft.io. Use the promo code AWESEMO for $20 of super cash on your first $100 deposit. And head to our Twitter account. Check out the pinned tweets. The giveaway is closed. Sorry. Didn't get into that one. But if you can get our NFL Twitter handle, Awesemo NFL, to 5,000 followers before the Super Bowl, we are doing our biggest giveaway ever. We're going to unlock the entire site at 6:45 on a Wednesday.
Are you serious?
Absolutely
it's not.
Not.
Be great. We're going to crash. We're going to crash instantly. There will be
100%
fire.
Not doing that. I'm kidding. It'll be better than that.
Oh, okay.
Guys, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. It's always awesome to see 3,300 people here. And good luck tonight.